CD 7.
"Where's Ben?" I ask, partly to change the subject, and partly because it's making me on edge, not knowing. "He's upstairs, lying down. Well, I'll go and get him in a minute. He'll want to say hello. If he's sleeping, then he'll want to see you." She says it firmly, no room for argument, though it sounds more like she's telling him that, even though he's not here. I hand her a mug, but the moment I'm done being busy, I find that I can't do this. I can't stay still talking about it. My main problem right now is my inability to be still, to be patient, it seems. "Fiona, I'm sorry, but do you mind if I go around to the annex? I haven't been there since, and I just wanted to, see it, I suppose." Not true, but it gives me time to clear my head, get some air. "Of course, I'll get Ben, but take your time and give me a shout if you need anything." I turn back to her when I'm nearly at the back door, unable to keep the question in. "Fiona, did the police... have they looked round the house at all?" She bites her lip. "They looked around the annex, yes, but not here." She doesn't add anything else, but looks down, away from me, and I wonder if the police just haven't asked to look round the house, or if she and Ben have refused to let them in. It makes me worried either way that they haven't looked around yet, and a familiar pulsing under my skin starts up again, urging me to do something. "And have they..." I swallow, hating how difficult this is to talk about. "Have they spoken to you? At the station, I mean." Fiona blanches, making the dark circles under her eyes more obvious, but her voice is steady. "They've spoken to Ben at the station, yes. They asked me a few questions when they were here, but I've not been in to see them. Not yet, anyway." She makes it sound so pleasant, not like we're all being interviewed about the murder of my mother. I nod slowly. I'm glad they've spoken to Ben and not her. I don't want them to be considering her as a suspect. Fiona's next words come out in a gush. "Sarah, if we knew anything, we'd tell you right away. You have to know that. This is as much a shock to us as to you, and I don't want you thinking..." I raise a hand to cut her off. I'm nowhere near ready to have this conversation. "I know," I say simply. "It's okay." Even though things are not okay, not by a long shot. Unfortunately, I'm not quite quick enough getting out the back door after that. "Sarah?" Ben's voice is rusty, like he's forgotten how to speak. I force myself to straighten out my face as I look over to where he's hovering in the doorway. I keep the door open behind me, even as the cool air bites through my clothes. "Hi," I say as calmly as I can. "I'm just going round to the annex, but I'll be back in a bit to say goodbye before I leave." I know my voice is clipped, almost rude, but I can't help it. "Are you... all right? I tried to call you after I saw you at the church." "I know, I'm sorry." There I go again, apologising to people when I shouldn't have to. He looks terrible. His stubble has grown out and is going grey in places. All muscle definition that he had just a week ago is seemingly lost. I wonder if it's just grief making him look like that, or if it's something else, if it's guilt. Fiona is probably expecting me to say something, to try and comfort him the way everyone keeps trying to comfort me. Hell, maybe Ben's expecting it too. But I can't. Instead, I ask the one thing I do want to know. "Ben, my mum rang me on the night that she..." I swallow. "On the night that she died." He frowns, waiting. "I didn't see it until too late, but she left me a message saying that she needed to tell me something." He just stays still. Too still, actually, and I can feel Fiona watching us both in the wings. You were with her when she..." I wrinkle my nose, annoyed at myself for my sudden inarticulacy. "Did she say anything to you that night? About what she might want to tell me?" Do you know what it might have been? No, he says, but he says it too quickly. I'm sorry, Sarah. His voice sounds wrong, like it's only just broken. I really don't. I wasn't with her when she tried to call you, and she... He rubs a hand over his face and it makes a scratching noise on his stubble. She wasn't very coherent that night. I'm sorry, he says again. I watch him for a moment more, waiting to see if he'll break. But he just looks at me with round, sad eyes that make me want to punch something. Sarah, I think maybe the three of us should... But I block out Fiona, rude as that might make me, and shut the door behind me without a word. My breath comes out as mist as I cross the garden towards the annex, choosing to walk on the grass, through the plants as an act of defiance. They seem to shrink back from me as I march on, whether because they're allowing me space to pass through or protecting themselves from me, I don't know. Well, this just confirms what I already suspected, doesn't it? Ben is a fucking liar. He must know something about the phone call, surely. He's just another person who's lying to me, just like the police won't tell me what they know, won't tell me if they've figured out what poison it was yet. All I want is for people to be honest with me. Is that so much to ask? It's because I'm raging about this that I don't notice someone walking towards me, don't hear the sound of footsteps until they're almost on top of me. I spin around just in time to see Phil's burly figure not 2 meters from me. I knew it, he snarls. It's your car, isn't it, in the drive? The same car that European chick made me look at, isn't it? Absurdly, the only thing I want to do right now is point out that European is a somewhat vague term, but looking at his purpling face makes me decide better of it. I don't know what you're talking about, I say instead, keeping my voice as even as possible to hide my shock that he's turned up like this when I was so sure I'd got away with it. It's my car on the drive, yes, but I don't know what you mean by that last part. He sneers. Oh, yeah. Well, you know what I think. I think you're a lying bitch. I bristle at that, the venom there. And I think you were around my house. What were you doing there? I don't know what you mean, I repeat. Surely I should be asking you what you're doing here, not the other way around. He takes a step towards me, but I refuse to back up, despite the warning prickles running up my forearms. No business of yours why I'm here. I'd say it is, given you're no longer welcome here. Just let yourself in, did you, through the gate? You're not allowed to do that anymore. I try for firm, but it comes out scathing, almost taunting, and his eyes flash in response. Damn it, control your fucking temper, Sarah. I saw your car there. Ironically, his voice is a hell of a lot calmer than mine. I deserve an answer as to why you were at my house. I wasn't, I say simply. I'll go to the police. Tell them you were there. I laugh, but stop when it sounds a little manic. Oh, really? And what proof do you have? Did you take a photo of the number plate? Do you have CCTV footage? He glares at me, but I know I've got him. Of course, it would all fall apart if he ever finds out that Nika is my flatmate, but that's future Sarah's problem. You still haven't told me why you're here. I'd wager that's a lot more suspicious than a car that looks similar to mine outside your dump of a house. I'm allowed to drive past, aren't I? Allowed to fucking grieve? You might not miss her, you ungrateful bitch, but I sure as hell do. He spits the B of bitch so that his spittle flies past my face, narrowly missing my cheek. This time, I'm the one to step towards him so that we're almost nose to nose, close enough that I can see his overlarge paws. How dare you? I growl. How dare you talk to me like that? Came here to see what you got in her will, did you? Seen what everything's worth? He laughs bitterly. I told her not to give everything to you, but she ignored me. That makes me hesitate. You knew. You knew she was going to leave everything to me. Admittedly, everything sounds a hell of a lot better than it is, but this certainly doesn't look good for Phil. I wonder if the police know yet. Of course I fucking knew, he says, his chest swelling, and clearly he doesn't think this looks bad for him. And she wouldn't listen when I told her you didn't deserve it, the way you treated her. Disgusting it was, leaving her to fend for herself after her husband died. A ringing starts up in my ears. After my dad died, you mean? I shake my head and my shoulders seem to collapse in on me. You know what? I don't deserve this. And I sure as hell have better things to do than standing out here talking to you. I drag my hands through my hair. You really think I want anything in there? I gesture to the annex door. I've lost my mother, for Christ's sake, and the last thing I'm thinking about is what stuff I might get as a result. You care so much about it? I demand, fishing the key out of my pocket. Here! I toss it to him, though he doesn't react in time, and it lands with a clink at his feet on the paved stone he's standing on. He doesn't bend to pick it up. Take it! Help yourself to everything, you insensitive fucking bastard! I walk past him, intending to leave him standing there, but even knowing that I shouldn't, that it won't accomplish anything, I can't help a few last words. You couldn't stand it, could you? He swivels to look at me, his face hidden in my shadow. Sharing her. Is that why the police think you did it? He clenches his hands into fists. You know shit. Do I now? I cock my head. So they didn't call you into the station then? How'd you know that? I shrug, though I'm not sure I pull off the casual look, not with every muscle in my body wired to breaking point. I have my sources. Well, you little bitch, given I'm still out here and not locked up in some cell, I think it's safe to say you're wrong about your theory, don't you? Don't call me a bitch. He laughs, the sound ugly and menacing, and the first pinpricks of genuine fear trace their way down my neck. Don't accuse me of murder, then. I go to step away, but he grabs my shoulders. I try to pull free, but he holds firm. Icy heat flushes through my veins, and I hitch in a breath. Fuck, maybe I had this all wrong. Maybe he really is dangerous, really would do something to me. Let me go. I hate the way my voice quivers. Take it back, he growls. Let me go. I don't want you spreading nasty rumours about me, do you hear? This time, when he spits, it lands just to the left of my mouth. I grimace, unable to wipe it away with my arms bound by his. What on earth is going on here? Warm relief chases away the ice in my veins at the sound of Fiona's voice. Took her long enough. Phil lets go of me, looking over my shoulder, and I turn to look at Fiona too, wiping my face with my jacket sleeve. Right behind her, barefoot, is Ben. Nothing, snarls Phil and barges past me. It didn't look like nothing, Fiona says warily, glancing at me. I reach up a hand to brush away angry tears that I've only just realised are there. I will not give Phil the satisfaction of knowing how much he's got to me. Phil slows down when he gets to Fiona, like he might say something, but Ben steps out in front of her. You really should leave now, and don't even think about coming back. You're not welcome here anymore. Ben's voice might be gruff, but it's firm. No hint of weakness there, and he draws himself up to full height. He might not be as well muscled as Phil, but he's taller. Phil laughs again, the bitterness emanating from him almost palpable. As opposed to before, when you were so welcoming. He casts a glance around at all of us. She deserved better than you three. He stomps his way to the gate, and none of us say anything as we watch him. But he's not done. I know, by the way, he says with a glance over his shoulder. I'm not as thick as you seem to think I am. He's looking directly at Ben. I know you were trying to fuck her, and I know you were angry that she didn't want you, that she chose me instead. With that, he swings the gate open and leaves, his footsteps heavy on the gravel driveway. In the darkness, I still manage to catch Fiona's eye, still manage to exchange a look that tells me, yes, Fiona knew about Ben and my mother. What isn't so easy to tell is whether she's wondering, in that moment, if Ben could have anything to do with her murder, whether the seed of doubt is there. I lose my chance to figure it out when she jerks her head at me to follow, then puts a hand on Ben's arm as they walk back to the house together. I crick my neck one way, then the other, to try and release some of the tension. Well, if she's not going to, then I'm certainly not going to be the first to say it. Chapter 23. The affair changes things, right? Murphy says as soon as she arrives at Ashby's desk. She holds out a Diet Coke to Ashby, keeps the regular one for herself. She feels two sets of eyes, the two uniformed police officers watching her, and knows they're eavesdropping. Ashby takes the Diet Coke, leans back in his chair. Well, I think it means we've got two strong suspects, both with a serious motive. So we're saying a definite no to Phil, despite the fact he could have found out Ben and Nicola were thinking of starting up again and got jealous? She knows, even as she says it, that there's something wrong with that theory, as much as she wishes it were true. So she holds up a hand when Ashby goes to speak. It doesn't really make sense, I know. Besides the fact that both Ben and Fiona are serious gardeners and Phil isn't, they were only going out for 6 months, which isn't that much time for something to go seriously wrong, for him to plot and carry out a prolonged murder. I know. She repeats, then sighs. So we're back to Ben being angry that she wouldn't start up the affair, gets jealous, kills her, or Fiona finding out about it, getting jealous and killing her. We don't have to prove motive, you know, Ashby says evenly. We just need to prove who did it. I know that, but isn't it easier if we have it? He shrugs. Sometimes. For a second, she feels like shaking him, just to rile him up, to get him out of his calm demeanour. He takes a sip of his Coke. All right, let's look at Ben. This affair has been happening on and off again for nearly 25 years. Then Nicola's husband dies. Perhaps she's caught up in guilt about cheating on him, so she refuses to start up with Ben again, even though he wants to. Right, says Murphy, tapping her fingernails, painted dark red today on the Coke can. So he can't deal with the rejection, especially when she starts going out with Phil. 6 months ago, maybe when she started seeing Phil, that's when he started to plan it out? Could make sense, Ashby concedes. And, Murphy adds, maybe he didn't actually up the poison, actually kill her, until he knew for sure she was going to reject him. Maybe he wanted to watch, see what she'd do. Ashby raises his eyebrows, says nothing, and she knows she's reaching. She blows out a breath. I don't like that he didn't call the ambulance right away. Could be that he just panicked, like he said, or that it really didn't seem as bad as we're now thinking it did. Easier in hindsight and all that. She knows he's just playing devil's advocate, that they need to consider it from all angles, but it feels like he's just contradicting her. He gives her a look that says he knows exactly what she's thinking, and her lips twitch involuntarily. There's the voicemail too, she says. Nicola could have been trying to tell Sarah about the affair, and Ben didn't want her to, so he upped the dose of poison. We don't know when Nicola called Sarah, though to me, it reads like Nicola only called her once she felt the effects of the poison kick in, which wouldn't give someone a motive to kill her for whatever she was going to say. Ashby swivels on his chair as they think in silence. For what it's worth, he says, my money's on the wife. Fiona? Something twists her gut at that. She liked Fiona. She doesn't want it to be her. But, well, I can see how the jealousy would eat away at her, having Nicola right next door like that, knowing about the affair. Would make sense if she'd been harbouring resentment towards Nicola for a while, but the opportunity to poison her only came once she moved right down the end of the garden. The garden, Murphy muses. The beautiful, elaborate garden with plants she couldn't begin to recognise. After the interview with Ben, the revelation of the affair, They applied for a warrant to search the house, the garden, but until it's granted, their hands are tied, given Fiona wouldn't let them in. Of course, they might have already got rid of the poison by now. And poison, she continues, pushing that uncomfortable thought aside. It's not as messy. You don't need to have physical strength or anything to use it. She hates how much sense it makes. The woman's weapon of choice, Ashby muses. Well, I mean, not really, Murphy says, staring across the office at the board, at Sarah and Fiona's faces this time. It's only something like the 6th most common murder weapon used by women. Ashby raises his eyebrows and she flushes. I looked it up. But women are still statistically more likely than men to choose poison as a murder weapon, Ashby says. Yeah, but if we're going by statistics, then the killer's far more likely to be a man, so actually all murder weapons are used more commonly by men, including poison. Ashby concedes that with a grunt. Not that it helps them either way. Whatever the statistics say, they don't help with making the arrest on an individual case. Murphy stares at the board again, at the 2 female faces looking out at her. A set of warm brown eyes and cool misty green ones that seem to change colour depending on where in the office she is. Are we ruling out Sarah as well as Phil? We're not ruling out anyone for certain, not until we make an arrest. But as it stands, we've got no motive for her, do we? And she lost her dad a year ago, so what, she just turns around and kills her mum just for good measure? And, Ashby sighs, even though I said otherwise at the beginning, she did come to us. If she killed her and it looked like the coroner was just going to rule the death as heart failure, then why the hell would Sarah then demand it be looked into as a murder? Why not sit back, hope everyone accepted that it was natural causes? Murphy downs the rest of her Coke. So we're getting Fiona in then? Yeah, be interesting to hear her side of it, if she thought the affair had ended like Ben's telling us. He swivels back and forth in his chair. What about the phones? Ben let us have his, right? Yeah, they're running checks on it now. Sarah's came up clean. Good to know. He rubs his hands across his face. The DI wants an update on where we are. What will you tell him? That we're working on it, see what he thinks. He might have a few ideas himself. Ashby's phone rings and he raises his eyebrows at Murphy when whoever's at the other end of the line answers. The caller's voice is too quiet to hear, so she only gets his side of the conversation, which is infuriatingly clipped. Ashby here? Is that so? When? And they're sure? All right, thanks. He hangs up, smiles grimly at Murphy. Well, you'll never guess who just got admitted into hospital for, wait for it, belladonna poisoning. Taken from case file, Nicola Gregory. Fiona Gregory. Extract from recorded interview. Date, 9th of the 10th, 2018. Duration, 41 minutes. Conducted by officers D.C. Murphy and D.S. Ashby. D.C. So, Fiona, how well would you say you knew Nicola? F.G. Well enough. I met Ben over 10 years ago, so I've known Nicola since about then. And of course, when Charlie passed away, she moved into the annex, so... D.C. That's right, very kind of you to let her live there. F.G. Well, it was Ben's idea, really. D.C. Ben was the one to suggest she move in? F.G. Yes, he offered. Nicola couldn't afford the mortgage on her house after Charlie died. They didn't have any savings, I don't think. D.S. How did you feel about Ben offering? F.G. Well, I mean, I wasn't thrilled about sharing the space, but I was hardly going to leave her on the street after her husband died, was I? And Nicola was really helpful. She was brilliant with the kids. D.C. Did you get on with Nicola, Fiona? F.G. Well, I definitely wouldn't call us the best of friends, but we ticked along okay. Like I said, she was great with my daughters, and she used to babysit a lot for Ben and I once she moved into the annex. DC. Why did you say you weren't the best of friends? FG. We didn't click, you know? We spent a fair amount of time together. Our husbands were brothers, after all. But we would never hang out, just the two of us or anything like that. DC. Why do you think you didn't click? FG. Well, you don't get on with everyone you meet, do you? DS. Fiona, were you aware that your husband was having an affair with Nicola? FG. Yes, he was having an affair with her, as in he hadn't been recently. That all stopped after he and I got together. DC. So he told you about his relationship with Nicola? FG. No, but he was hardly going to admit to sleeping with his brother's wife to a new girlfriend, was he? He didn't have to tell me, it was obvious if you paid enough attention. Watched the two of them on nights out. I'm still surprised Charlie never knew. Though maybe he did and chose to ignore it. DC. And could this be a reason why you and Nicola didn't click? FG. Well, yes. Knowing that Ben had been sleeping with her didn't exactly help things, I'll admit. I tried to get past it, but it was difficult, always having her around. DC. And I suppose that would have become more difficult once she moved into the annex. FG. Yes. Look, I'll be honest. It was hard having her there, having the constant reminder of her and Ben's history. But the affair was over for a while now. I believe that. I have to believe that Ben has been faithful to me since we've been married. He would have told me, or at least I would have noticed, if they'd started up again. DS. All right, thanks, Fiona. Can I ask, do you know much about gardening? FG. What? Well, I know a bit, yes. Both Ben and I like to spend time in the garden. DS. An enviable skill. I don't know much about the garden myself. What about you, Detective Murphy? DC. Oh, no, nothing. Always thought I'd like to get more into it, if I had the time. And I'd need a garden, I suppose. What kind of plants do you have in your garden, Fiona? FG. I'm afraid I really couldn't list them all off the top of my head. DC. Daisies, perhaps? I think I saw some lilies by the pond when we were there. FG. Yes, I have both. I'm not really sure what this has to do with anything, though. DS. I spotted some purple flowers there, too, when we were there. Didn't you, Detective Murphy? DC. Yeah, I think I did. What are the purple ones called? FG. You mean the teasels? DC. No, I'm not sure they're the ones I'm thinking of. DS. Me neither. I was thinking of deadly nightshade, belladonna. Do you have any of that in the garden, Fiona? FG. I don't know. We've got so many plants. Ben and I are always buying new ones. I really can't remember them all. DS. I see. Fiona, Phil said that Nicola said something about eyes just before she lost consciousness. FG. What? Eyes? Yes. I suppose she did. But she really wasn't making any sense at all by that point. I barely remember what she said, if I'm honest. We were all a bit panicked by that point, as I'm sure you understand. DC. So you have no idea what Nicola could have been referring to? FG. No, I'm sorry. None at all. Chapter 24. Fiona is waiting for me under the overhang of the entrance to the police station, her head hunched, both hands stuck in her blue puffer pockets. She's staring at the concrete ground in front of her so hard that she doesn't notice me pulling into the car park until I stop right in front of the glass door entrance. She walks around the front of the car to get to the passenger seat in a rather zombie-like manner. She stares straight ahead without saying anything as we leave the ugly brick building behind. I glance at her when we get stopped by the first red traffic light. Up close, I can see how tired she is. Her face looks gaunt. There are dark rings under her puffy eyes, and her chocolate curls have lost their shine. Safe to say she's looked better. "Do you want to talk about it?" I ask, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. I'm not really sure how to handle it, the almost electric tension that's buzzing in the car between us, louder than whatever Radio 1 is playing right now. I really don't. She's staring out the window rather than at me. "I'm sorry, my darling. Is that okay?" The traffic light turns green and I nod as I shift the car into first and drive on. I understand. Partly true, I suppose. I do understand, theoretically, why she doesn't want to talk about it, with me at least. But that doesn't mean I like it. It's making me twitchy again, not knowing what they asked her, not knowing if they gave anything away about the case. And I want to know what she said to them too. I fucking hate this. I hate not being able to talk openly with her. Hate the wedge this is driving between us. "I'm sorry I had to call you to pick me up," she adds after a moment. "Ben has the car. He's gone to pick up Lily and Emily, and I can't call him because the police still have his phone." She glances at me but quickly looks away, like she's admitting his guilt by telling me that. "I don't mind picking you up," I say, still with the same carefully neutral tone. They should take my mother's car, really. It's not like anyone else would want it, and it would make their lives a hell of a lot easier rather than having to juggle a car between them. "Oh," she says suddenly, "I have something to tell you. I meant to call you to tell you, but I got, distracted." She clasps her hands together in her lap and looks at me properly for the first time since she got in the car. "Phil went into the hospital. She wrings her hands. "Well, it seems he's been poisoned." I stare at her. "What?" "Watch the road, Sarah." I snap my attention back to the road, notice I'm dangerously close to the middle, and take a breath as I steady the car. "What do you mean, he's been poisoned? Were you there at the hospital? Did you see him come in?" Our roles shift and she becomes the calm one. "I was in briefly this morning just to drop something off before I had to. Well, I didn't see it myself, but one of the nurses told me about it. My friend Becky, you've met her, remember?" I don't actually remember, but I don't care about that right now. "Is it serious? Is it the same poison?" "I don't know," she says softly. It was plant poison, I think, but I don't know any more than that. I suppose the police will be looking into it, though they mention nothing to me." "Maybe they don't know," I murmur. I'll have to make sure they find out if that's the case. Plant poison. A jolt runs through me. And the police were asking me about the plants at my flat, so it's a good guess that they already know that much at least. So why haven't they done something about it? What are they waiting for? My nerves feel jittery. The need to do something active rather than just sit around waiting is building once again. I keep talking, trying to distract myself. "So, is he okay?" "It's fine. He went into hospital last night after he came round." I finish, and she nods. "Apparently he was complaining of a stomachache, but he was also ranting about poison, about his girlfriend, and, well, I suppose the doctors took him seriously. They've probably seen about it all in the news, so I imagine that helped. He's completely fine, though," she reiterates. "Apparently it was only mild traces of poison, something that probably would have gone undetected if he hadn't been so insistent about it." She flicks me a glance, and I get the impression that insistent wasn't the word that this nurse used to describe him. "I think they're letting him out today." I go quiet, thinking. I'm surprised he went into hospital so quickly because of something so mild. And it had to be mild, the dose he must have ingested. But then he'd been watching my mother getting worse and worse, and no one noticed until it was too late. Maybe that would make anyone paranoid. So now, if he's in hospital because of poison, then surely that drives him lower down the suspect list, because he wouldn't poison himself. And surely the detectives must realise that whoever was poisoning my mother was likely to be careful not to ingest the same stuff that was killing her, given how planned out this was. "I'm sorry," Fiona says quietly. "I know it's difficult to hear." I frown, wondering why she'd think that. Neither of us are exactly fond of Phil. But then it clicks, far too late, showing how bloody distracted I am. He's fine. He noticed something was wrong and went to hospital right away. Surely that adds credence to the idea that if my mother had done that, she would have been fine too. I swallow and nod, for her sake. I search around for another topic, desperate to change the subject. It doesn't take me long. If we can't talk about what the police are doing, then maybe we can clear the air around something else. "Fiona," I say hesitantly, "I know that my mum and Ben were having an affair." She must know that I've guessed, but even so, the words seem to stick heavily in the air, and I clear my throat to try and move them along. "I just wanted to say that I'm sorry, I guess," I mutter. Her neck seems to elongate as she stretches her head towards me with a jerk. "What? Why on earth are you sorry?" "I just meant..." But she talks over me. "Sarah, you have nothing to apologise for. Do you hear me? Nothing. You're not responsible for your mother's actions. You do not deserve any part of the blame, okay?" I purse my lips at this, wondering if that means she thinks my mother was the one who should have taken the blame, if perhaps she deserved what she got because of it. Fiona seems to pick up on my thoughts from my expression and carries on quickly. "Not that I didn't mean..." She pushes her curls back from her face. "It takes two, okay? Maybe even more than two. It happened, and I don't like it, of course, but your mother wasn't a cruel person. She didn't..." I lift my hand from its resting position on the gear stick and squeeze hers where it sits in her lap, cutting off this rant before it can go any further. I don't want either of us to think too much further down this line. Fiona smiles at me gratefully. We go the rest of the journey in, if not comfortable, then at least tolerable silence, and I only speak again when I pull onto the driveway. "I bought some books for Lily and Emily. Do you mind if I drop them off while I'm here?" "Of course. Ben doesn't seem to be home with them yet, but you can come in. They should be back soon." "Great, thanks." I grab both my handbag and the tote bag full of books off the back seat, try for a smile as we walk to the front door. Bribery, you know. Fiona smiles back, though for some reason it looks a little sad. "You don't have to bribe them. They love you already." Once inside, I pause for a second. "You know, I'm here, right? If you ever need my help looking after them, I mean. I know my mum, that she helped." The sight of Fiona's eyes shining with unshed tears makes an uncomfortable, guilty feeling flare up in my stomach. I swallow to try to push it away. "And I know I wasn't around a huge amount after my dad died," I continue, "that I cut myself off a bit, but I don't want it to be the same this time. Thank you, my darling." Angry with myself for the lump that's growing in my throat, I look down to the tote bag. "Shall I put the books away?" Fiona seems to pick up on my need to escape this conversation. "You can leave them in their room if you like." I glance at the stairs, but shake my head. "I'll put them on the bookshelf." I head to the living room, and Fiona snorts quietly, but not derisively, behind me. I know what she's thinking, that I'm being overdramatic and I need to have everything in its rightful place. "Sarah?" I look back at her. She's not smiling anymore. "We understood, you know, that you needed time alone after your dad died. Your mum understood that too." I nod, blinking back the burning in my eyes. Grief, but also that too familiar anger where my parents' deaths are concerned. I turn away before she can say anything else. I cross the living room to the bookshelf, which is next to the TV. It's only half full of books. The top shelf is made up of framed photos, positioned around a pot plant in the middle. I stare at one of the photos. Fiona, Ben, Lily and Emily, all grinning at the beach. I feel a stab of pain looking at it, because it reminds me of my childhood, but also because of the thought that there's a strong chance that Lily and Emily's perfect childhoods might soon be ruined. I press my lips together. I'll make sure I'm around, that I'm here for them, to help them through it. I take the books out of the bag and search for the right place to put them, my fingers itching to rearrange everything in height order. I bend down to look at the children's books on the bottom shelf, mainly picture books still, even though Emily is at school now. They won't know which books I've brought them, I realise, and reluctantly leave the 2 new picture books, Giraffes Can't Dance and Room on the Broom, on the floor in front of the bookshelf. Fiona can point them out, and hopefully they'll think of me when they read them. I straighten up and run my index finger along the other books, lingering on the gardening ones. I take a few out to look at them when I can't see the title. One of them I bought Fiona for Christmas 2 years ago. I frown as I trace the spine, thinking. It's there again, the buzzing in my veins, driving me to do something. Sarah? Fiona's voice again, calling to me from the kitchen, makes me jump, and I shove their books, along with the ones I brought, back in line. Do you want a cup of tea? No thanks, I've got to get going, actually. I pick up my now empty tote bag and stick my head around the kitchen door, where Fiona is bustling about, slippers having replaced her practical shoes. I left the books on the floor by the bookshelf so you can show the girls when they get home. My words tumble out my mouth a little too quickly, my mind still on the other books there. I'll come round to see them another time. They'll love that. She smiles at me, but I see the effort it takes and know that I'm doing the right thing, leaving her alone. I don't think either of us could stand any more forced conversation, trying to pretend that things are fine. Until the police make the arrest, I know it won't get any better. I'll see you later. I lift my hand in an awkward half wave and back away, even though I sense she wants to give me a hug. Got a dash? I say, overly jovially. I grimace at how I sound, how completely unlike me. I let myself out the front door, hesitate in the driveway. But the hesitation is unnecessary. I've already decided what I'm going to do. The buzzing in my veins intensifies, urging me on. I tiptoe across the gravel and open the side gate as quietly as I can. Fiona wouldn't have a problem with me going into the garden, but I don't want her to see me. And there it is. On the far side of the garden, through the gate, fenced off so that the girls can't get in here, play in here. In the part of the garden that lives mostly in shade, left to its own devices almost all year round because of it. Green leaves, reddish-brown flowers just beginning to wilt, and berries with a waxy sheen. Belladonna. One of the plants in the book on Fiona and Ben's bookshelf. I look behind me, half expecting Fiona to burst out of the back door, to ask just what the hell I think I'm doing. When I look back at the plant, I realise my hands are shaking. I should have done this long before now, come to the garden. But I presumed that the police would do a thorough search, would have noticed something when they did. It seems not, however. Apparently, I'm the only fucking person actually committed to the investigation. And so, if they won't get off their arses to come and look, then once again, I'm going to have to do the work for them. Because I can't leave it down to chance. Not now. I reach into my handbag and bring out the scissors I always carry around with me for trimming the ends of flowers at my dad's grave. Being careful not to touch the plant, I clip off a few cuttings. I bend down and, wrapping my hand in my jacket sleeve, dump the flowers unceremoniously into my bag. I leave quickly, rushing across the lawn to the gate, keeping my head down like an ostrich. If I can't see Fiona, then she can't see me. My heart is beating fast, my mouth dry as I start the car. I wonder what she'll think, only just hearing the engine now, whether she'll even realise. I don't think she'll notice what I've done to the plant. I think it's subtle enough, and surely she wouldn't go looking. I reverse out the driveway, my handbag seeming to throb with heat from the cuttings inside it. Shit, I really do hope she doesn't find out what I've done, what I'm about to do. And with that thought dancing around my mind, I set off, not towards home, but towards the police station. Taken from case file, Nicola Gregory. Sarah Elizabeth Gregory. Extract from recorded interview. Date: 9th of the 10th, 2018. Duration: 21 minutes. Conducted by officers D.C. Murphy and D.S. Ashby. S.G. I can't believe you're still sitting here. I brought you evidence that Ben has been growing a poisonous plant. A plant that may very well have been used to kill my mother, and you're still waiting around talking to me? D.S. Ben? S.G. Yes, Ben, it's his garden. D.S. But isn't it also Fiona's garden? S.G. Fiona would never have done anything to my mother. D.S. They didn't get on too well. S.G. Yes, but it's Fiona. She would never hurt anyone. And Ben was mad at my mother, I know it. She didn't want to carry on the affair, and yes, I know about that too. D.C. You know about the affair? S.G. Yes, I guessed a while ago. Then Phil came round to Ben and Fiona's house the other day, accused Ben of it right in front of me and Fiona, so it's all out in the open now. D.S. All right. Sarah, why do you suspect that belladonna was the plant used to kill your mother? S.G. A few things. You asked about plants at my house the other day, so I thought maybe that might be to do with the poison. And then I found out today, about an hour ago, that Phil went into hospital because of plant poisoning. D.C. How did you find out about that? S.G. Fiona works there, she told me. D.S. All right, but that doesn't explain why you suspect belladonna out of all the possible poisonous plants out there. S.G. Yeah, well, I was at the house, at Ben and Fiona's house, just now, and I saw a book on plants on their bookshelf, and it made me think. It made me realise I'd seen one of the poisonous plants, in their garden before. Fiona was teaching me a bit about gardening, so I'd spent some time out there, and I remembered. And when I went to look, it was right there. All of it seemed like too much of a coincidence. I know you've talked to Ben. I know you think it was someone close to my mum who killed her. So I figured it out, and I came straight here. Am I right? I'm right, aren't I? Belladonna is one of the plants we're looking at, yes? S.G. Inaudible. D.C. Sarah, are you okay? S.G. No, I'm not okay. My mother is dead and you're not doing anything about it. I'm telling you all this and you're still here, doing nothing. It's like you don't even want to catch her killer. It's like I'm the only one who cares, and I have a headache. D.C. I can assure you, you're not the only one who cares. S.G. Fine, then prove it. D.C. Would you like some water? I think I have a paracetamol somewhere. S.G. No, I took some about an hour ago. D.S. Are headaches a common occurrence for you, Sarah? S.G. At the moment, yes. The doctor thinks it's grief, that once I give in to it, I'll feel better. D.S. Do you mind if we take a sample of your blood? Just a pinprick. S.G. Why? D.S. It's just to help with the investigation. I can't tell you exactly why, not at this stage, but I hope it will help us to draw some conclusions, and soon. S.G. All right, yeah, that's fine. D.S. Great, Detective Murphy will do that for you. D.C. If you're squeamish about blood... S.G. I'm not. I give blood all the time. D.C. Oh, that's a good thing to do. SG. It is, yes, it can save lives. Do you know my dad died of leukemia? DC. We do, sadly, yes. SG. Well then, you know why it's important to me. My blood couldn't save him, but it might save someone else. Do you? Give blood? You really should. Inaudible. DC. Sarah? SG. Sorry. It's the headache. Chapter 25. Well, it's a good thing the warrant came through, says Murphy as she grabs her phone and purse off her desk, nerves thrumming with excitement. Still, she wonders what the DI will say when he finds out that the plant was in the garden the whole time. If he'll blame the bronze team for not finding the belladonna when they first went round. If someone will blame Ashby somehow, or her. You got Sarah's blood sample off to the lab, right? Asks Ashby. Yeah, I told them it was urgent to test it alongside Fiona's. I called Ben. He's on his way in for us to take a sample. He'll be here imminently, apparently. I assured him it wouldn't take long. He's got his daughters with him. They exchange a look at that. This is a father they're talking about, or a mother. Still, that doesn't exclude you from being a murderer. Great. You ready to go? Now, what about the forensic team? It's going to take them a while, but I think we should get out there first. They can meet us there. Okay. Don't you want to wait for Ben? Thomas can handle it. Great. The DC she doesn't like. Still, she'd far rather be at the house with Ashby than sitting around waiting for a tox result to come back. Okay then, yes. She hesitates when Ashby makes to walk out of the office. Is it suspicious, do you think, that she showed up with the plan, just as we're about to search the house? She couldn't have known we were about to search the house, he points out, and her explanation makes sense to me. If she found out that Phil was in hospital for poisoning but that he survived, I can see how that would set her on edge a little. I've seen this happen before. People hate the waiting and something snaps. Plus her dad only died a year ago too. Losing both parents that quickly has got to do something to you. She murmurs a vague agreement. Maybe she should be feeling more sympathetic towards Sarah. She just doesn't like that she seems to have been doing her own investigation right alongside them, though she supposes that might say something more about her than Sarah, wanting to solve it all herself. She crosses the office to join Ashby by the exit, glances over at the board one last time, to the photo of Nicola in the centre. Do you think she knew, she murmurs, that someone had done it to her? Do you think she knew at the end who did it to her? I don't know. Wish we could ask her. Soon, the message on the flowers. If she was spooked by that, if it was a threat, then why not tell someone? Why not report it? What were you afraid of? But of course, the dead can't answer. At least we can get her some justice. When she looks doubtful, he claps a friendly hand on her shoulder. We've got this, you'll see. You're about to help close your first murder case. Don't stress about the things you didn't see. Enjoy the high of it, for now at least. There'll be plenty of times in the future where you don't get to the bottom of it. Excellent. Thanks for that. They walk out the station together. We still don't know which one it is, though, Ben or Fiona. Yeah. His voice is still over easy, but she can tell from his expression that it's bothering him too. Sarah seems pretty confident it's Ben. It's true, she had indeed seemed very confident, and it makes her think again that there's something they're missing here, like Sarah knows something they don't, something she doesn't want to tell them for some reason, that's making her so sure Ben is guilty. She has a good relationship with Fiona, though, doesn't she? She glances at Ashby, who of course is raising his eyebrows. Well, I saw her picking Fiona up from the station. Don't you think that says something? It says Fiona needed a lift. You're reaching out if you think it's anything more. We'll be able to get both of them in for questioning properly after we search the house, find the poison. But Fiona lied. If Sarah is right, then Fiona lied about there not being belladonna in the garden. True, Ashby says with a sigh. But we don't know why. Could be she's covering for her husband, or maybe she honestly couldn't remember. Maybe it's both of them, in it together. She senses he doesn't really like that theory. She's not sure she does either, to be honest. Why? Why would they work together on it? Murphy glances around, but there's no sign of Sarah in the waiting room. You think she's gone home? Is waiting for us to call her and let her know we made an arrest? No, I think she's probably parked round the corner waiting to see if we follow through. Murphy starts to answer, but stops when someone calls out behind them. She turns to see D.C. Thomas striding towards them, clutching a green file and looking like he's having to hold himself back from running. What's wrong? Ashby asks. Is it urgent? It is, he says breathlessly. The techs have the full reports from Ben and Fiona's phones. I said I'd run it over as soon as I was around. And? Ashby sounds neither excited nor impressed by this. Thomas hands over the folder and Ashby opens it. He takes a look and his eyebrows shoot up practically into his hairline. He shoves it into Murphy's hands. Well, why don't you see what you make of this? Chapter 26. The police are taking a fucking age. What are they playing at? Dragging their heels like this when I've literally just dumped everything in their laps. I told Fiona that I thought I'd left my phone at her house, which obviously she accepted without question, and then agreed to stay for a glass of wine so I have the excuse to be here. I'm now sitting in their living room, though neither of them are here. Fiona is in the kitchen getting the wine, and Ben, having got back only moments ago, immediately took Lily and Emily upstairs, seemingly unable to be in the same room as me. It's like he knows somehow, despite the fact I've said nothing. But then maybe he has his own reasons for not wanting to be in the same room as me. Fuck, this room feels too claustrophobic. The heat is cranked up high and it's almost unbearable, unnatural compared to the chill outside. My stomach curdles. Maybe I shouldn't have gone to the police. What if that threw them off? I fight the need to get up, move in some way or another. I probably shouldn't even be here now. Should probably just be waiting out of the way somewhere. I'd find out the outcome, sooner or later. But I can't. I need to be here, need to see firsthand how this plays out. Then I hear it, a car pulling in. The doorbell. I jump to my feet. Hold on, calls Fiona. I peer around the doorway and see the detectives walk into the hallway when Fiona opens the front door. Ashby doesn't seem to notice me. Murphy flicks me a glance. Nothing registers on her face, so I can't tell what she thinks, finding me here. Well, too fucking bad if they don't like it. Hello? Fiona says cautiously. Hello, Fiona, Ashby says in a would-be pleasant voice. We were wondering if we could have a quick word. We have a warrant, Murphy says, equally pleasantly. Without waiting for Fiona to answer, she manoeuvres around her so that Fiona has to step aside. We need to search the house, I'm afraid, Murphy says, squaring her shoulders in a way that makes her seem even more imposing, more confident than when I first met her. What? Why? I wonder what Fiona's thinking right now, why she looks panicked. Is there a chance that she, too, thinks Ben is guilty and has just been covering for him all this time? I'm not sure I actually want to know the answer to that. Detective Murphy is going to search the garden, Ashby says in answer. It would be easier if you all stayed in one place. He glances at me as he speaks. Fiona stares at me, too, noticing me, watching for the first time. I keep my expression blank. I don't want her to know I'm the reason they're here. Don't want her to blame me. Fiona gets the girls and Ben from upstairs. Ben seems to accept it all without question, and I have to admit I'm a little concerned that he's not putting up more of an argument. It doesn't do anything to help calm the thrumming under my skin. So close. I'm so close now to getting the closure I need. We wait in the kitchen in total silence. Even Lily and Emily seem to pick up on it, huddling by Fiona, not saying a word. I don't look at any of them. Right now, this has to be all about me. I stare out the kitchen window and watch Murphy as she walks the length of the garden, straight over to the bit that's sectioned off by the gate. She doesn't bother asking for the key, just vaults over. She walks straight to it, right up to the belladonna. Chapter 27. Murphy sucks in her breath. There it is, right in front of her, almost identical to how it looks on the internet. So this little plant is the murder weapon. It's kind of pretty, though the flowers are wilted now, the plant coming to the end of its summer life. Almost like it knows it's done its job.
End of CD 7. CD 8.
She didn't ask Ashby how to play this in the car, and she's not actually sure if she should go straight back into the house or not. So she calls him. He answers on the first ring. Well? I'm standing in front of it. It's definitely Deadly Nightshade, or Belladonna, whatever. All right. And I found a book on poisonous plants on their bookshelf. Not exactly bulletproof evidence, but will be interesting to see how they react. What now? Do we get them into the station? Let's ask them a few questions here first. I spoke to James just now. He said it was fine. But I think we've got enough for the arrest. The phone, the book, the plant. All right. Keep looking, just in case. Check the bins, the compost. Anything else out there? Got it. She's about to hang up when she feels her phone vibrate in her hand. Hang on, she tells Ashby. She looks down at the screen. It's the lab, guys. Could be about the blood results. Answer it. I'll stay on the line. I want to hear this. She glances behind her to the kitchen window. It's too far away for her to make out expressions, but she can feel them all in there, watching her. She switches lines on her phone. Murphy speaking. You said to call as soon as the blood results were in? It's a cool female voice, and she doesn't even introduce herself. But right now, Murphy doesn't care. And you guys were right. There's only one person without the poison in their system. Chapter 28. It doesn't take long before both Murphy and Ashby join us in the kitchen. Ben and Fiona have had a muttered conversation in the meantime, but I haven't bothered to listen, too intent on Murphy in the garden. They exchange a look when the detectives come in. They seem united in that moment, and it worries me. Sarah, Fiona says in her too calm voice, making me jolt, would you mind taking the girls into the living room, popping the TV on for them? Of course, I say, trying to make my voice easy, to hide the fact that blood is pulsing in my fingertips faster and faster. It's not exactly like I can refuse her, is it? Not without making a scene, without seeming unreasonable. She doesn't know what I know, wouldn't understand how much I want to be in the room right now. Come on, Trouble, I say to Emily, who smiles uncertainly at me. Lily looks between me, her mum and her dad. To save time, I haul her up in my arms and prop her on my hip. She doesn't protest, so I grab Emily's hand and take them both into the living room. I'm surprised to find I feel a little numb. I can feel my heart reacting, its pulse unnervingly quick, but it's like I'm detached from it, like my brain has decided I can't react, not yet, not until I know how it all plays out. I plop Lily down on the sofa and Emily scrambles up next to her. I hear Fiona asking if she can make some tea, and the skin along my forearms tingles in anticipation. I log into Amazon on the TV and press play on the first thing I see there, Moana. I don't like this one, Lily complains instantly. It's scary. No, it's not, I say, putting the control on top of the TV. It's great, one of my favourites. Will you watch it with us? Asks Emily. I'll be back in a minute, okay? I walk quickly to the kitchen. I can't miss this. I arrive in time to hear Murphy speaking. Mr. and Mrs. Gregory, are you aware that there's a belladonna plant in your garden? Back to Mr. and Mrs. now. The formality of it only increases my anticipation. Ben frowns. Yeah, of course, we have a few plants of it, so what? Murphy and Ashby exchange a look, and I fight the urge to hold my breath. This is it. This is fucking it. Well, you see, Mr. Gregory, says Ashby conversationally, that was the plant that was used to poison Nicola. There's a sharp intake of breath from the counter, and I snap my gaze to Fiona. All colour is draining from her face, and she doesn't seem to know where to look. What? Ben's voice is hoarse. But it can't be from our plant. No one speaks. The kettle hits boil and switches itself off, but Fiona doesn't move to do anything with it. I feel like I can't breathe, like if I make the slightest of movements it could fuck things up somehow. Murphy breaks the silence. Fiona? Fiona's whole body jerks at the sound of her name. You said previously that you didn't think you had any belladonna in your garden. I forgot, she mumbles. Impossible to tell right now if she's being truthful. Why would she lie? I'm back to it then. The uncomfortable thought that she could have thought Ben did it, had been covering for him. Do you mind telling us when you planted the belladonna? Asks Ashby. Ben looks at Fiona, but she doesn't return it this time, only stands there, gripping the counter behind her. She looks like she's about to pass out. About a year ago, Ben says reluctantly. Didn't you say you liked the way it looked, Fiona? Fiona jerks at this, but doesn't answer. It's smart, I suppose, if he means to do it, putting her in the firing line, the bastard. My nails bite into the flesh of my palms, the sharp pinpricks of pain helping to keep me grounded. Were you both aware it was poisonous? Asks Murphy. Well, yes. Fiona's voice trembles. We've been drilling it into the girls, not to touch it, you know. It's why it's in the locked part of the garden, so the girls can't get to it. She trails off, hugs herself with both arms. She looks like she's about to start rocking any second. You can't think we used it to kill Nicola. Ben looks back and forth between the two detectives, then gives me the most fleeting of glances. I'm surprised neither he nor Fiona have told me to leave yet. Maybe they know I wouldn't go. Well, perhaps we'd be willing to entertain the possibility that you didn't, had we not also found this. Ashby picks up a book that had been face down on the kitchen table, unnoticed by all of us. My lips twist into an expression I know must look ugly as I read the title. Handbook of Poisonous and Injurious Plants. Ben stares at it, and the dark circles under his eyes seem to deepen so that his face looks even more ashen. We have lots of gardening books, he says hoarsely. Yes, that's right, murmurs Ashby, setting the book face up on the kitchen table for us all to look at, which we all do, like we're mesmerised. You're a keen gardener, aren't you? We both are, says Fiona, her voice a little harsher now, some confidence there. What the fuck is she doing? Is she trying to defend him? I couldn't tell you the list of gardening books on our shelf right now. People buy them for us as gifts all the time. A book doesn't mean anything. No, of course not, says Ashby, holding his hands up, palms out. But, well, it's not just the book, is it? Not just the plant in the garden either, actually, come to think of it. He sucks in a contemplative breath. As you know, we asked for a sample of each of your blood. He includes me in his sweep around the room, the first time he's acknowledged that I'm lurking here. My heart quickens at the mention of blood. And, Fiona demands, And Ben, picks up Murphy, was the only one without the poison in his system. Chapter 29. For a few seconds, no one speaks. Even the kitchen itself seems to be holding its breath, waiting. Then Ben breaks the perfectly still silence like he's smashing a glass window. What? What do you mean? Well, what we think it means is that there's a very good chance you were the one administering the poison. There. Murphy said it. The first time it's actually been voiced out loud. Where I was detached before, everything now zooms into focus so that I'm hyper-aware of every little movement. The jerk of Ben's head, the little spasms of Fiona's hands. I'm tense, almost in pain from how rigid my body is. I can't relax, because it's not over, not yet, not until they say the final words. No, says Ben. That's ridiculous. I told you, I'd never do anything to Nicola. He starts pacing. For a man who thinks it's ridiculous, he's doing a good job of seeming worried. I trace his movements with my eyes, sure he'll break any second now. I loved her, Ben stresses, either ignoring or not noticing the way Fiona flinches at that. This doesn't mean anything. It means nothing at all. Fiona's swallow is audible. Does this... Are you saying that the rest of us, that me and Sarah, that we've been poisoned? Murphy's voice is kind when she speaks. It means there are traces in your systems, yes, but there's not enough to hurt you. It will pass out your body naturally in a few days, provided you're careful not to ingest any more. She turns her attention on Ben, who actually takes half a step back under the force of her gaze. I feel a thrill of satisfaction at that, and the way he's acting panicked, guilty. It means that you were very careful when poisoning Nicola, weren't you? You were careful not to eat any of it yourself, but less so about leaving traces in the annex, where other people might accidentally ingest it. Isn't that right? The likes of Phil, Sarah, even your wife. No. Ben shakes his head frantically. You've got this all wrong. If this is true, then I don't know how it happened. I don't. The girls, exclaims Fiona desperately. We'll go to the hospital, get them tested, I say quickly. I wait for her to meet my gaze head on. They'll be okay, I whisper. And here's the first trickle of relief, the slight relaxing of my muscles, because we acknowledge something in our shared gaze. We're in this together now, Fiona and I. Look, says Ben, and though he's clearly trying for a reasonable tone, he doesn't pull it off. I don't know what all of this means, but I didn't kill Nicola, okay? I didn't. I couldn't have... His firm voice gives way to desperation at the end. Good. He should know what it's like to feel like that. I never really ate around the annex, so maybe it just got into the other systems and I got lucky. Fiona opens her mouth, about to say something, but Ashby cuts her off. Maybe that's true, he says, and for a second all tension returns to my body. But then there's this. He slides a brown folder across the kitchen table, though none of us make to pick it up. It's a printout of your phone records, says Murphy, like she knows we won't actually look at it. It took a bit of time, but our experts were able to pull even the deleted data from your phone. Deleted internet searches, for instance. Like the ones searching belladonna, searching specific doses of the poison, how much poison is needed to kill someone, and how much would just cause someone to feel ill. What? I never looked anything like that up. Or even if I did, it must have been to do with the garden. But neither detective seems at all moved by what he's saying. Ashby walks around the kitchen table to Ben. He clasps Ben's shoulder with one hand, produces a set of handcuffs with the other. I watch it, as if in slow motion. It's happening. It's really happening. I'm finally getting justice. Ben is still shaking his head, mouthing the word no over and over as he looks down at the handcuffs, seemingly paralysed. Benjamin Gregory, you are under arrest for the murder of Nicola Gregory. Chapter 30. It is barely a second before Ashby is speaking again, yet it feels like eternity. Just like that, the crucial moment is over. This point I've been building up to is gone, with barely enough time for me to even register it's happening. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if... I don't hear the rest of the caution statement. The ringing in my ears is eclipsing all else. The utter disbelief that this has happened. That is over. Fiona is saying something, her voice on the verge of hysterical, but my mind somehow drowns her out. The kitchen seems to blur in front of me, and my legs feel shaky. Fuck, I think I might collapse. Mummy? It's Emily's voice that snaps me out of my daze. I'd almost forgotten the girls were there, just in the next room. I want to say something comforting, but I can't think of what it should be. In my peripheral vision, I see Murphy walking round to join Ashby by Ben's side. See the two of them leading him away. Go back to the living room, Em, I say. But she stays there, hovering, and seconds later Lily appears too. Guilt weighs heavily on me in that moment. They're innocent in all this. They don't deserve it. Shouldn't be watching their dad being taken away like this. Even if I do think they'll be better off without Ben in their lives. I look over to where Fiona is now following Ben, like she's attached to strings, pulled along with him, through the hallway towards the front door. She seems to be in a daze, no noise coming from her, like she can't believe this is happening. Fiona, come on, you don't want to watch this. But she ignores me. Her silence breaks. No. The word is a whisper, and I'm sure I'm the only one who hears it. No, she says again, loud enough now for Ben to look back at her. His face is an ugly, pale yellow, like he's about to be sick. This can't be happening, she says desperately. I watch her carefully, waiting for her to stand up for him, to protest his innocence. But she doesn't. How could you? How could you do this to us? Her cheeks are a bright, blotchy red, her eyes so wide her pupils look almost dilated. She seems to be completely unaware the children are right there. I didn't, Ben shouts, craning his neck to try and look back at us from where they're leading him down the driveway. At her. Fiona, shit, I didn't. This is all a misunderstanding. He's trying to stay calm, but his voice shakes and a grim satisfaction creeps through me at the sound of it. You bastard, Fiona whispers. Why wasn't I enough for you? Why did you have to do this? I see now she's started crying, the porch light softly illuminating her tears. I wonder yet again if she suspected him all this time. Why else would she be so willing to accept her husband as a murderer? Fiona! But Ben doesn't get to finish because Ashby is shoving him in the back of their car, not seeming to care that he's quite literally tearing a family apart right now. Fiona lets out a heaving sob and Murphy turns towards her at the sound. You should go back inside, Murphy says gently. Take a bit of time to get your head around this. Mummy? Lily's cartoon voice seems unnaturally loud, high and clear in the chaos surrounding us. Fiona gasps, runs back to her and Emily. My girls, she whispers, pulling them towards her. I'm so sorry, my darlings. Don't worry, it'll be okay. It'll all be okay. Emily frowns, definitely not buying that. Where are they taking Daddy? It's okay, she whispers again. Her hand shakes as she strokes Emily's head. She looks up at me from where she's bent down with the girls. Sarah, I don't know how to... Her voice breaks and the guilt inside me intensifies. I've got what I wanted, but that doesn't stop me from wishing there wasn't this collateral damage. Don't, I whisper back. I can't think of anything else to say. After so long of wanting to get to this point, I am utterly at a loss as to what to do now. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I just can't believe this is happening. It's not... Maybe they got it wrong and this is all just a horrible, horrible mistake. Maybe they'll let him go. Maybe, I say. But my tone of voice makes it clear what I think and I know, from how Fiona was with Ben, from the way she doesn't seem to believe what she's saying, that she agrees with me. She can believe that Ben did it. There must have been so many more cracks in their marriage than the ones they let show. What's a mistake, Mummy? Emily asks, and the sound of her little voice sends me close to crying, just like Fiona is now. Shh, my darling, Fiona says, stroking Emily's hair. I can see her trying to pull herself together for the girls. It gives me hope that she'll get through this, because she has them to pull her through. We'll be okay. It's all she can seem to say to the girls, and I wonder how she'll do it, how she'll explain to them where her father has been taken and why. I glance towards the driveway, through the still open front door. Their dark car has gone now. Neither Fiona nor I noticed it leaving. Just like that, he's gone. It feels so anticlimactic, though I suppose it's all still to come. The trial, the conviction. They've got enough, though. I'm almost certain of it. The evidence is stacked up against Ben. Surely there's no way he'll get off. You will be okay, I say to Fiona, trying to convince myself of it at the same time. She nods. I know. She gives her daughters another big squeeze, reluctant to let go of them, it seems. We'll be absolutely fine, just us girls, won't we? She manages a smile as she says it, and for the briefest of seconds it looks real. Looks like she's almost glad about the prospect. Or maybe that's me just imagining it, hoping for it. Because if she's glad, then I have less to feel guilty for. I'm hungry, Emily says after a beat, hesitantly, almost like she's trying to diffuse the tension. Fiona stands up. Why don't you go back to the living room for a minute? I'll bring in some popcorn and we can have movie night. How about that? Lily and Emily exchange a glance that seems too old for them, and I feel a pang watching it. I remind myself that, given what type of person Ben is, they will be better off without him, in the long run. Go on, encourages Fiona. I'll be there in a minute. Please. When they still don't move, her voice changes, becomes more commanding. Emily, be a big girl. Take your sister into the sitting room. That does it, and Emily grabs Lily's hand, gives it an almost defiant yank, and the two of them leave Fiona and I alone in the hallway, the cool outside air wrapping around us from the still open front door. I hear the girls start arguing about what to watch almost immediately. Fiona walks to the front door, shuts it silently. The click is too loud, seems to echo through the house, like it's signifying something. An end to something. A big change about to happen. She takes a breath, like she's pulling herself together. And when she turns back to me, when she takes both my hands in hers, her eyes are dry. She's in shock, I'm sure. Her pale face, her too calm voice, evidence of it. I wonder what will happen when the adrenaline leaves her. We mustn't let this destroy our family, Sarah. I shake my head. We won't. We need each other. The girls need you in their lives. Her gaze is very direct, enough to make me a little uncomfortable. I know, I say as calmly as I can. Surely this isn't the time. Her husband has just been led away for my mother's murder. We both need to deal with that before we talk about moving forward together. Lily is crying now, her sobs carrying through to us, a despairing noise indistinguishable from when she cries about Emily taking her toys. Only this time it seems justified. Fiona doesn't seem to notice, her eyes too intent on my face, her gaze resolute. Sarah, your family. I know, I stress and pull my hands away from hers. I take a breath. I love Fiona, but really this is all a bit much, this talk of families. Right now I just want to sit in a dark room and not speak to anyone. She shakes her head. No. The word is firm, and I know then that something is about to change. The skin on the back of my hands buzzes. The ringing in my ears starts up again. You don't get it. You really are their family. She glances towards the living room, drops her voice. Your mum wanted to tell you, I think, before she takes a breath, and the moment before she speaks feels eternal. But I make myself keep looking at her straight in the eye as she says the words that have the power to change everything. Ben is your father. Part 3. Fiona. Extract from the Frome Times, dated 19th of the 4th, 19. Benjamin Gregory, 47, of St Lawrence House, Frome, has been convicted of the murder of Nicola Gregory, 53, following a 5-day trial at Bristol Crown Court. Mr Benjamin Gregory and Mrs Nicola Gregory were related only through marriage, Mrs Gregory having been married to Mr Gregory's late stepbrother. The court heard that Mr Gregory and Mrs Gregory had previously had an affair when Mrs Gregory's late husband was still alive. The jury were also told that Benjamin and Nicola Gregory had a child together, Sarah Gregory, 24. Ms Gregory was previously unaware of her true biological father. Thus the prosecution argued that Mr Gregory killed Mrs Gregory, both because she would not resume the affair and because she was going to tell Ms Gregory the truth about her conception, something Mr Gregory wanted to be kept secret. The cause of death was poison, specifically the use of the belladonna plant or deadly nightshade, which was found in abundance in Mr Gregory's garden. Mr Gregory pleaded innocent to the charge of murder, but guilty to the charge of manslaughter, maintaining that he did not mean to kill Mrs Gregory and must have poisoned her accidentally. However, there was evidence that Mrs Gregory was ingesting poison over the course of many weeks, suggesting that this was premeditated. The jury found Mr Gregory guilty of murder. He has been given a life sentence to be served at HMP Bristol. Detective Sergeant Ashby, with the Avon and Somerset Police, said, "We are satisfied with how the trial went and are confident that the public will be safer with this man behind bars." Mr Gregory's wife, Fiona Gregory, declined to comment. However, his niece and biological daughter, Sarah Gregory, said, "I am still in shock that this could happen, that Ben could be guilty of such a thing. But I can find some closure in the fact that he's been put away and can't do any more damage to me or what's left of my family. Now maybe we can move on from this nightmare and start to put it behind us. We just ask that the community leave us be and let us try to come to terms with what's happened in our own time." Chapter 31. It felt wrong somehow that the sun was shining, that she was wearing a flowing lilac skirt and a white vest top, her shoulders bare for the first time this year, warm. Fiona thought perhaps that it should be raining, or at least grey, that the weather should reflect the reason she was here. Of course, objectively, she realised that was nonsense, an example of people desperate to feel that the world around them somehow cared, was somehow attuned to their wants and needs. Still, she blew out a sharp breath as she walked up the path to the church, trying to keep her steps light respectful. The plastic encasing the flowers crinkled beneath her fingers as she tensed her hands. She wouldn't give in to the desire to turn back, as uncomfortable as it made her to be here. She turned right, onto the grass and into the graveyard, the ground hard beneath her pumps. Though she tried to control it, her heart beat a little faster as she approached the two headstones, one dark, one ashy grey, sitting side by side. It was pure nonsense that she should feel like this. They were gone now, Charlie and Nicola. There was nothing they could do to her now. Still. Yes, that word again. Still. Knowing that they were gone, objectively knowing the truth of it, didn't stop the gnawing of guilt that started right in the middle of her stomach and seemed to travel outwards so that it made her insides pulse. She stopped in front of Nicola's grave and a shudder ran down her spine. She was standing right on top of Nicola's body, her flesh perhaps gone by now, eaten away by worms, but her bones still there, separated from Fiona's shoes only by a layer of dirt. She tightened her grip on the flower stems in her right hand. It was the first time she'd been here, the first time she'd been able to make herself come, because, really, the hypocrisy of it, that she was here when her husband was locked up for killing the woman. And there it was again, that pulsing guilt. It clawed at her these days, reared up just when she thought she'd beaten it down. Because there were so many things she'd done wrong, so many things she should have done differently. Perhaps if she'd just paid more attention to what was going on right under her nose, she wouldn't be here, laying flowers on the grave of a woman she'd never really liked. No. Fiona closed her eyes briefly, the warmth of the sun stroking her eyelids. That wasn't fair. Certainly she hadn't liked Nicola when she was alive, because she was someone Ben had had an affair with in the past, because of the way Ben had still looked at her, had clearly still felt about her. But she understood that she'd been more mad at Ben than Nicola. Furious, really, that he would still act that way around Nicola, that he clearly still wanted her. And yes, there was a bitter, ugly part of her that was all the more hurt that he'd feel that way about someone older than her. She didn't know why, but it was strangely more insulting that way. In her more reasonable moments, she'd understood that it wasn't Nicola's fault, the way Ben felt about her. But she'd been unable to take it out solely on him in case she risked ruining their marriage completely, and that was something she'd never have done to her daughters. So it had been easier to blame Nicola, to see her as the demon in all this. Even now that Nicola, not Fiona, was certainly the victim, she found it tricky to separate her feelings, to know whether she had disliked her fundamentally as a person, as opposed to what she had come to represent. Fiona bent down, stared at Nicola's name engraved on the gravestone, the lighter flecks sparkling a little in the sun, almost mocking, reflecting some happiness Nicola hadn't enjoyed, certainly not at the end. There were flowers there already in that metal vase, dead, wilting flowers. It seemed worse somehow that there were old flowers there, rather than none at all. Fiona glanced around the graveyard. Only a handful of gravestones had fresh flowers, some of which were potted so as to stay there longer. Charlie's was one of those graves. Someone had come here recently, topped up the flowers. Topped up his, but not Nicola's. A colleague, perhaps, or an old school friend. Surely here was a sign that he'd had more friends than her in life. She frowned at herself. She was still finding ways to put Nicola down in her own mind. She shouldn't do it. She had no need to, not now. And anyway, it might not be that at all. It might just be that there was no scandal in the way Charlie had died, whereas murder, well, that made people uncomfortable to say the least. Silly, she supposed, to think that the dead would care whether flowers lay atop their bones. Silly, but still a little sad. And so, despite everything, despite that clawing, pulsing sensation in her gut, Fiona felt a sob try to force its way out her throat and had to press her lips together firmly to stop it from escaping. Hypocritical, to be crying for Nicola. She blinked to clear the blurriness of her eyes as she reached for the metal vase on Nicola's grave, unscrewed the top and carefully took out the dead flowers. Lilies, by the look of things. White lilies. Clearly someone who hadn't known her very well. Nicola always said she hated white flowers. Maybe Phil. She'd seen him bring her white roses a few times, seen the fake smile Nicola had plastered to her face when he did. God, Phil. She hadn't thought about him in so long now. Unlike her, he'd escaped the horror of the trial, dismissed by the police and everyone else as just Nicola's lover, someone who would grieve and move on with his own life. Unlike her, he hadn't had the intimate details of his family life put on show for the whole country to read about in the papers. Hadn't lost friends because of it. Friends who had preposterously said that they never liked Ben, or that there was always something weird about their marriage. Things that were said behind her back, but which without fail got back to her anyway, in a town like this. An ugly sensation swirled at the thought of it. A dark fog infecting every part of her, try as she might to keep it at bay. Nonsense, all of it. Because no one had disliked Ben. No one had thought she and Ben had anything other than an idyllic family life. A big house, a car, 2 beautiful daughters. Yes, a few close friends had known of Fiona's doubts about Ben and Nicola because she'd needed to talk about it, but even then... She pulled the metal vase, warm from the sun, out of its holder and straightened. She walked to the corner of the church, leaving the bunch of flowers, shamefully bought at the local Sainsbury's petrol station on her way back from Bristol, between Nicola's and Charlie's graves. God, being here was bringing it all back. The way she'd felt during the trial, the horror of having to sit there, listening to her husband try to defend himself, having to answer the lawyer's questions until she felt like someone had scooped away her insides, felt like she didn't even understand her own answers. At times, she still felt numb from it, even now. Felt utter disbelief that it had all really happened, that it had come to this. In the shock of the arrest, she'd initially accepted it, the weight of the murder investigation, still having to deal with the fallout of Ben and Nicola's relationship. It had been pressing down on her, so that it had all somehow seemed to make sense, and there was all that evidence. But now, with the space she'd had to breathe, she found it unbelievable, really, that the father of her children had been convicted not just of manslaughter, but of murder. Murder. The word rolled around the inside of her mouth, and she wanted to spit it out like sour milk and be rid of it. She filled the metal vase up with water from the old rusted tap, then started back to the grave. A bead of sweat at the base of her neck, sliding a few inches down her back. She set the vase down, then folded herself neatly onto the ground too, not caring if her skirt got dirty because of it. She sat there, the silence a little eerie despite the bright day, and took the plastic wrapping off the flowers. She hadn't bought scissors. How stupid of her to forget that, given she spent half her free time in the garden, knew perfectly well you needed to trim the stems. Though she was not, according to that superior prosecution lawyer, to those detectives before her, as good a gardener as Ben, who had apparently harvested the deadly nightshade over many months, gave it to Nicola in small doses, just enough to give her pain, to make her delirious even, but not enough to kill her. According to the prosecution, Ben had wanted to make Nicola suffer before he killed her. make her suffer because he was in love with her and she didn't love him back, wouldn't take him back after Charlie died. Killed her because she was going to tell Sarah the truth, that he was her father. The jury hadn't bought the manslaughter plea, the one that the defence lawyer they'd hired had been so keen for Ben to make. Mark Barrett, a young, up-and-coming lawyer. He'd insisted that it would be better for Ben to make the plea, even though he hadn't initially wanted to. Had said the evidence didn't look good, that it would be better if they tried to get off on manslaughter, that they had more of a chance of that than saying he'd done absolutely nothing wrong. And Ben had agreed. Fiona hadn't understood when Ben had tried to explain it to her. He'd tried to use the same arguments as the lawyer, that he thought it was the best shot, yet at the same time he was still insisting again and again that he hadn't killed Nicola. But to Fiona, refusing to plead innocent had been like admitting to her that he did it, and it was that, really, that made her truly give up on him. Clearly the jury had been thinking along the same lines, because now he was in prison. For life. Life. And even if he did get out early, he wouldn't see his girls grow up. They wouldn't know their dad, would only have fleeting childhood memories of him. She blinked furiously against the stinging in her eyes. Not for her this time, but for her beautiful daughters who still didn't really understand what had happened, why they couldn't see their dad, why he wasn't there to read them a bedtime story anymore. There was no way she'd take them to see him in prison, no. She didn't want them thinking of him in there. Didn't want them telling other children that their dad was locked up. Wouldn't have them victimised because of it. She wouldn't have them known as the children of a murderer. Better they didn't know. Better they just thought Daddy had gone away for a bit, as painful as that was. She'd explain it to them when they got older. Her fingers shook a little as she arranged the flowers in the vase. It was times like this, the quiet, alone times, that were the hardest. When she was with the girls, she managed to get through it, to be their mother, to put on a smile for them. But as soon as she didn't have someone to pretend to, that's when she had to face up to what she was feeling, had to try and deal with the misery, the anger. It was getting worse now. Funny, perhaps, that it was worse now than the long months leading up to the trial itself. During those days, a strange hollowness had settled into her and stayed there, so that she had seemed to be looking at everything through smeared glasses. Since the moment she'd watched those detectives handcuff him, marking him out as a killer. But now that hollowness was lifting, making her realise just how shredded her life was, making her realise that he'd done this to her daughters. He'd ripped apart her life, and all he could say in response was how much he loved the woman he'd killed. She did her best to take a slow, steady breath, to fight the need to scream or sob, as she put the metal vase back into its holder. She glanced at Charlie's grave. Poor Charlie. She hoped that wherever he wasn't watching this. Hoped he didn't know what had happened to his family after he died. She'd liked Charlie, perhaps even more so because she felt they were both in some ways victims of the connection Nicola and Ben shared. She hoped he hadn't known the true extent of it. Hoped he had truly believed Sarah was his daughter. He'd been quiet in general around most people, but with Sarah he always lit up. They brought each other to life, those two. God, Sarah. She closed her eyes briefly, fighting the stinging that was starting up again. She didn't want to cry, didn't think she deserved that release. She'd wondered again and again if she'd done the right thing, telling her that way. She should have waited, should have found a better moment. It was the stress of the investigation, of hiding her knowledge from the police that had made her do it, made her blurt it out, like someone had taken a lid off the secret and set it free the moment she saw Ben in handcuffs. Because he was the reason she'd kept quiet. She'd known, even if no one else did, what Nicola had wanted to tell Sarah that day. She'd known what Nicola had meant when she talked about eyes. Because Sarah's eyes were nothing like Charlie's cobalt blue. No, they might be stormier, more expressive, but they were almost the exact colour of Ben's, of Lily's. And the timing of the affair. They were together in that year before Sarah was born. But she hadn't said anything about her suspicions, historically because she hadn't wanted another block in her and Ben's relationship, and it was easier to pretend it wasn't true. And while Charlie was alive, she wouldn't have done that to Charlie, to Sarah. It wasn't her place. And then, once the police started asking questions, once it was clear they thought one of them had killed Nicola, well, she was ashamed to admit that she kept it secret to protect Ben. Because she'd been worried that it would look bad for him, because she didn't want to give the police undue reason to suspect him, not when she wasn't sure he'd even known about it himself. She hadn't wanted to complicate things. And now she felt like an idiot for doing that, for handling the whole thing so badly. She'd wanted to protect her husband, yet he'd proven since then over and over that he hadn't cared one bit about her. She shouldn't have done it. Shouldn't have misled the police for a man who turned out to be guilty. Shouldn't have told Sarah the way she did. Shouldn't have stayed with Ben despite her suspicions about Nicola. Shouldn't. She crossed her arms and dug her nails into flesh, fighting the hot ball of anger inside her. She swallowed slowly, knowing the feeling would fade and that she'd be able to get through it. She'd survived this long. She could keep doing it. Keep just putting one foot in front of the other. Besides, if Sarah could do it, so could she. Thank God for Sarah, really. If it hadn't been for her, she didn't know how she'd have got through these past months. She'd been an absolute star helping out with girls. But then, they'd always loved her. She'd thought that the trial and all that led up to it would have driven her and Sarah apart. But Sarah had surprised Fiona with her ability to keep it together, with how determined she was to not let it ruin her, ruin their relationship. It had helped enormously, having someone else going through a similar thing. They'd both been lied to, both had family who had betrayed them, and both had to stand up in front of a jury and talk about their personal lives. Another reason she hadn't been to see Ben, she supposed. It felt like disloyalty to Sarah, who had left no doubt in her hatred for Ben, despite her ability to forgive Fiona. Sarah, who was looking after the girls right now so Fiona could go on to her leaving drinks. The gnawing guilt was back now, knowing what she was about to do. She checked her watch. She needed to leave. It was only 4 p.m, but she had one stop to make before she headed to those drinks. She stood up, shook the dust out of her skirt. "I'm sorry," she whispered to Nicola's name. Despite herself, a single tear escaped, traced a line of salt down her bare cheek. "If it makes any difference, I'm sorry." And with that she turned, head down, and walked back towards the car, brushing aside the evidence of that tear. Chapter 32. Ben was waiting for her at one of those awful grey tables in the visitors' area of the prison. He looked terrible, worse even than he had at the end of the trial. It was like he'd had the life pumped out of him, the very essence of what had made him, scooped away. Nothing like the man she'd met in the pub who'd charmed her from the instant they started talking, had made her dance when usually she hated it. She'd fallen for him so hard in those first few months, had been beyond ecstatic when he'd asked her to marry him after only 8 months of dating. That was part of the problem, she supposed, that it had been so unequal, their relationship, right from the beginning. She should have known that she was just a stopgap, a way to fill the hole left by Nicola. But she hadn't wanted to see it. She tried to keep calm as she sat opposite him, but was too aware of the guards everywhere, watching them. She wondered if they knew who she was, wondered if they judged her, either for being here now or not coming sooner. In that moment she felt exactly how everyone else saw her, the wife of a murderer. It sent something icy trickling down her spine, made her sit straighter, as if to fight it. She wondered how Ben had managed to do it, through the entire investigation. Pretend, like she was pretending now. Fiona. Ben breathed her name like a lifeline. She hated that. He had proven, hadn't he, that she was certainly not that. All this time, since his arrest, Ben's one defence had been that he couldn't have done it because he loved Nicola. Over and over he told anyone that would listen how much he loved her. And yes, she knew he was trying to get off a murder charge, but still, how was she supposed to feel about it? That all this time he'd loved another woman, through their wedding, the birth of their daughters. Didn't Ben for one moment consider how she might have felt? He could have told her he loved her too, could have told her that he had to say it for the trial, could have apologised for it, begged her forgiveness. He'd done none of that, she thought bitterly. He'd apologised for the mess in general, but he'd been all denial the whole time. And he'd never once apologised for loving Nicola, never once told her he loved her just as much. Even if it wasn't the truth, he could have told her. At least then she'd have known he cared enough to lie. She took a breath to steady herself, inhaling the stale, recycled air that smelled like old socks and onion. Felt her spine stiffen with resolve. She owed him nothing, not after what he'd put her through. She came as a courtesy, nothing more. Came because, despite everything, he was still her daughter's father. I came to tell you that we're moving, she said shortly. The girls and I. She was pleased with how crisp her words sounded, how firm. Fiona, what? You're moving? She felt the weight of his hollow gaze on her. To Devon, yes, to be near my parents. You know they moved there when they retired, but you never got on with your parents. True, they hadn't had the easiest of relationships. They hadn't approved of her getting married so quickly, for one, though they turned out to be very right about that, didn't they? And despite the fact they hadn't been in her life very much over the last 10 years, they were something. She knew they would help with the girls, that they'd be there for her when it came down to it, which was more than she could say for Ben. Well, the girls will love being by the sea, and so will I. We need a fresh start, away from all this. She spoke briskly, refusing to let emotion creep into her voice. It was so hard when he was looking at her like that, reminding her of the hell he'd put her through these last 6 months. She tried to focus on the fact that she was leaving, to focus on the promise of the future rather than drowning in the present. So you're taking them away from me. We need a fresh start, she said again. And how dare he make it sound like it was something she was doing to him? How dare he insinuate that she was the bad guy in this decision? She pressed her feet hard against the floor to stop herself from either running from the room right now or else leaning across and hitting him. She hadn't decided which was more appealing. She could hear the muttered conversations between the other prisoners and their visitors in the silence that followed. She caught the odd word through the babble of voices, words that didn't make sense out of context. She hoped that meant no one else could overhear her either. It was hard enough having this conversation out in the open where she was only too aware of the eyes on her, judging her, the way the whole town had been judging her since the beginning of this. When? Ben asked, his voice dull like he'd already given in. Given up. It was easier, she decided, that there was barely any trace of the man she knew there. No trace of the man who had stayed with her in the hospital room through her 20-hour labour with Emily. whose face had expressed so much joy when he held his first child, second child. Not that she'd been 100% sure of that at the time. Not that Ben had shown any fatherly concern towards Sarah, ever. Next week. She ignored his jolt. She had to do what was right for her and the girls, not for him. It's the Easter holidays for Emily, so an easier move. He said nothing in the pause that followed. Sarah's coming with us too, she said, feeling the words tumbling from her, the need to avoid sitting here in silence too much to ignore. She seems to think she'll find a new job easily enough, and she wants to be around Lily and Emily since she... Well, the fact that he still had the nerve to hold her gaze at that was unbelievable. She had to admit she'd been surprised when Sarah had agreed to come with them, given she had a good job here, a flatmate she liked. But she'd assured Fiona that Nika would understand, and Fiona was grateful. It was important that Lily and Emily had a relationship with her, their sister. At least if they wouldn't have a father, she could give them that. Well, she continued, I just came to tell you that. I thought you should know. And now you do, so I'll... She stood, felt the nearest guard trace her movements with his eyes. Still, Ben said nothing, just watched her with that dejected gaze. It was unnerving. She was glad, she told herself. She'd heard it all before, the pleas, the excuses. That didn't stop her feeling just a bit guilty, though, leaving him here like this ragdoll version of the man she'd married. She hated that, too, the guilt. She shouldn't have to feel it on top of everything, so she turned it into anger, that he should be making her feel guilty when she was most certainly doing nothing wrong. The rest of the visitors were still seated, a few couples holding hands across the tables, their relationships clearly not ruined by whatever landed those men in here. Fiona had every intention of walking out and not looking back, of making this the ending it was supposed to be. But she couldn't stop herself from turning to him, from asking, Did you know? Did you know that Sarah was your daughter? She hadn't asked him outright before. The defence lawyer had, she knew, because it became a key factor in the court case, the fact that Ben hadn't wanted the secret to come out. But she'd avoided it, just like she'd avoided asking him for the entirety of the marriage. Did you know that's what Nicola wanted to tell her? No, Ben said, meeting her gaze full on. His eyes, Sarah's eyes, seemed too big now that his face was thinner. No to both, Fiona. I would have told you if I knew, please believe that. But how could she? How could she believe anything he told her after everything? I didn't do it, Fee, he said wearily, like he wasn't really expecting her to believe him. He must have guessed what she was thinking. They still knew each other's tics, after all. That hadn't changed. Well, it wasn't an accident, she snapped. The prosecution had convinced not just the jury of that, but her too. Then someone else did it. The words hung between them. It was the first time he'd said it, said exactly those words, to her anyway. During the murder investigation, they'd never discussed theories. She'd wondered at the time if it was because he'd suspected her, if there was just the sliver of doubt there for him, as it had been for her. After all, Nicola had been poisoned quite literally in their back garden. She hadn't seriously believed he'd done it, though, not until the evidence was slammed down in front of her. Still, they hadn't speculated together, had retreated into themselves, showing up not so much fractures as clean breaks in their marriage. They stared at each other for what felt like several long minutes. The room seemed quieter, like it and everyone in it were holding their breath, waiting for her to make a decision. Whether to entertain the possibility, whether to fight for him now where she hadn't before. She took a breath, tasted the staleness. But before she could say that final goodbye, As if he knew she was about to turn away from him for good, he spoke again. "Fiona, do you really think I would have been so careful not to poison the girls, but yet let you eat it?" It was something that had come up in the court case, something the prosecution had used to point out Ben's guilt, that he'd been so careful not to poison his daughters, but that he couldn't control who else consumed the poison. "You love Lily and Emily," Fiona whispered. "I love you too, Fee." His eyes were imploring on hers, and it was like he knew, like the bastard knew that's what she'd been desperate to hear and was using it to make her believe him. "You loved Nicola more," she said sharply. When he didn't deny it, she felt her heart cave in on itself, even though she'd already known it. She turned on her heel once again. "Think about it, Fiona. When did you ever eat round the annex? You were hardly going round there for tea and cake with Nicola." She glared at him over her shoulder, but his eyes stayed steady on hers. "So for the poison to get into your system, it had to be at our house, and then it would have had to be deliberate, to poison you and not the girls." She stared at him disbelievingly. Of course he was saying this. It was the first time she'd been to see him since the conviction, so of course he'd be saying it wasn't him, would be trying to blame it on someone else. "Maybe you did it deliberately then," she said coldly. He laughed, though it was devoid of all humour, not the light, charming laugh she knew. "Why on earth would I do that? And Fiona," he said before she could interrupt, "if you don't believe that I feel anything for you, you've said yourself, I love my daughters. I would never do anything to risk taking their mother away from them." Damn it, there were tears in her eyes despite herself. She took one heaving breath, dashed a tear away, and straightened her back. "Goodbye, Ben," she said. She'd meant it to come out sharp, final, but it sounded sad instead. She was breathing heavily, fighting the sobs that threatened to overwhelm her as she got her phone, purse and car keys from the locker she'd had to store her valuables in. Walked past the guards with their metal detectors, the sniffer dogs.
End of CD 8. CD 9.
She couldn't let him get to her. There was nothing to suggest it could be anyone else. No evidence, no other motive. She'd made her decision, was starting to come to terms with it. She wouldn't go back on that now. Couldn't put herself through it all over again. She had one voicemail, and she listened to it as she stepped into air that, if not fresh, was at least better than inside. "Hi Fiona, it's Maddie again here calling you from the Daily Mail. I just wanted to check you got my last message." Fiona gritted her teeth, hung up. Bloody Maddie. She was sure she was one of the ones who'd turned up at the house, waiting on her front doorstep until Sarah came over and got rid of them. They'd been hounding her even before the conviction. The Daily Mail, the Daily Mirror, the Sun, not to mention the local newspaper. She had no idea how they knew where she lived, how they got her number, though she supposed it wouldn't have been too hard to find someone in this town willing to share. She'd made the mistake of answering her phone to the first unknown number, had been so confused to find herself speaking to a journalist that she'd nearly started answering the questions before she'd realised what was happening. She threw down her phone on the passenger seat once she got to her car, almost relieved that anger had crushed her need to cry. This was what Ben didn't understand. This was why she had to take the girls and go, down to the coast where no one knew who they were, where she didn't have to worry if the next doorbell might be another one of them offering her money to hear her side of the story. She'd been plunged into infamy with the case, the target of gossip everywhere she went. Everyone had an opinion, and just because she'd refused to talk to any of the journalists, it didn't mean they hadn't shared those opinions. She'd been cast as a victim, as an idiot for not noticing, as a good wife for sticking by Ben, or a terrible one for not fighting for him. She knew people in town were reading about her, knew they were also making judgments on her whenever she went to the local shop or to pick Emily up from school. It wasn't just that she was the wife of a murderer, the mother of his children, but the romanticism of the whole thing, the affair, the secret child. The papers had even made the poison itself out to be romantic. Belladonna meant, quite literally, beautiful lady. The lover's choice of poison, a nod to Ben's tragic love for Nicola. Extract from court transcript, dated 5th of the 4th, 19. Appearances: B.G., Benjamin Thomas Gregory. L.J., Laura Jenkins, prosecution. T.B., Thomas Barrett, defence. L.J. I've just a few points to clarify, Mr. Gregory. We've previously established here that the belladonna poison found its way into Nicola's system through her tea. That is, the police forensic team found evidence of the plant mixed with tea leaves on the compost heap. On your compost heap. On the night in question, you have admitted to giving Nicola a cup of tea, isn't that right? B.G. Yes, but I didn't know the tea leaves had been mixed with the poison. L.J. You have previously said that I must have accidentally put the belladonna into her tea the night she died. B.G. That's what I mean, it was an accident. L.J. But how is something like that accidental? T.B. Your Lordship, Judge. Miss James, if you could rephrase. L.J. You are a self-professed experienced gardener, Mr. Gregory. How would you not recognise the belladonna when putting it into her tea? B.G. Look, it must have been crushed up small enough for me not to notice or something. I was just trying to help her to get some fluid into her, and I'm not convinced that it was even that cup of tea that killed her, despite what you all say. L.J. Why tea? Why not water, if all you wanted was to get fluid into her? B.G. She liked tea. L.J. Exactly, she liked tea, and you knew that, knew she drank it often, knew that tea would easily hide the taste of the sweet belladonna plant, didn't you? B.G. No, I didn't. L.J. You didn't know that she liked tea? Or you didn't know that belladonna was sweet? B.G. I didn't put the belladonna in the tea. Of course I knew she liked tea. Everyone likes tea, for God's sake. And look, the night she died, the tea you're talking about, she barely drank any of it. Phil and Fiona can probably back me up on that. It was still sitting on the bedside table. Besides, doesn't belladonna take a while to work? Why would I give it to her and then immediately go and get Fiona, call the ambulance? Why wouldn't I wait for it to take effect? She was already ill when I went round that night. I've told you that, told everyone that, over and over, but none of you will listen to me. And how do you know it takes a while to work, Mr. Gregory? B.G. My lawyer and I looked it up as soon as I found out I was going on trial. L.J. You didn't know anything about the plant beforehand then? Despite the fact you performed a Google search on your phone specifically looking at the properties of the belladonna plant? B.G. I didn't search that on my phone. L.J. I see, and yet, if you didn't, then who did? B.G. I don't know. I leave my phone lying around a lot. Anyone could have got to it. L.J. Who, exactly? B.G. I'm sorry. L.J. Who do you think has access to your phone? B.G. Well, I don't know. I mean, my wife, I suppose, my daughters, people at work. I leave it on my desk. One of them could have picked it up, maybe, needed to use it or something. L.J. I see. Is your phone password protected? B.G. Well, yeah, it's an iPhone. It has a passcode. L.J. And who has access to this passcode? B.G. Well, my wife probably knows it. L.J. Your wife, of course. So do you mean that you think your wife may have been researching the belladonna? No, I'm not saying that. I didn't mean that. LJ. All right then, apart from your wife, would anyone else know your passcode? BG. I tell people the code all the time. If someone asked to borrow it, I would have just let them. Besides, why would I have let the police have my phone if I thought they'd find something on it? LJ. Well, I suppose that's a question only you can answer. Perhaps you thought they wouldn't find the search because it was deleted. I have to say, if it were an innocent search, then I find it hard to understand why someone would try to delete evidence of it. BG. Look, I can only tell you over and over. I'm sure it must have been someone else searching on my phone. Fiona, or Sarah, for instance. She's got into gardening. She could have wanted to know more about the plants in our garden. LJ. Mr. Gregory, you are pleading guilty to the charge of manslaughter, yet the evidence provided by the medical examiner suggests that Nicola was being poisoned over the course of many weeks, which suggests a fair degree of premeditation to me. Not only that, but there were large quantities of the belladonna tea leaf compound found in your compost heap, more than just 1 cup of tea's worth. You were poisoning Nicola over the course of many weeks, mixing the belladonna into her tea every few days, weren't you, Mr. Gregory? BG. No, I wasn't. I didn't murder Nicola. I don't care what the evidence says. I didn't. I loved her. LJ. When did you switch to tea leaves, Mr. Gregory? BG. What? I don't remember. LJ. About 6 months ago. That's what your wife said. BG. Fine, maybe. LJ. Coincidental timing to switch to tea leaves just before the poisoning started. It would have been harder to mix the belladonna in with a tea bag, wouldn't it? BG. Exactly. Look, I wasn't the one to make the switch. It wasn't my idea. It was Nicola's own idea, I think, or maybe Sarah's, I can't remember. Something about plastic and tea bags, I don't know. I just went along with it. LJ. I see. The night she died, Nicola left a message on her daughter, Sarah's phone, saying she had to tell her something before it was too late. Were you present for that call, Mr. Gregory? BG. No. LJ. So you didn't hear her leave that message? BG. No. LJ. You didn't worry, perhaps, that Nicola was finally going to tell Sarah the truth, something both you and she had been keeping from her, that she is, in fact, your biological daughter? BG. No, I didn't hear it. LJ. You didn't worry, after Nicola told Sarah this, that your family life could be ruined, that your wife would leave you, that your niece, that is to say, your daughter, would be horrified that you kept this secret from her all these years? BG. No. LJ. So you wouldn't have minded if Nicola told Sarah that you were her father? BG. Look, I didn't even know myself, so how was I supposed to know Nicola was planning on telling Sarah? Chapter 33. Fee! Becky, a pretty blonde nurse from the hospital who was always smiling, bounded over to her and gave her a quick, hard hug. We thought you'd bailed on us. She smiled, and though it was clearly a joke, Fiona wondered if there was a little bit of truth behind it. Wondered again if she could actually face it, put on the smile, the banter for this when she'd just seen her husband in prison. Come join us and we'll get you a drink. Becky grabbed Fiona's hand and pulled her across the pub to a booth where the rest of them were sitting. Fiona glanced around nervously. It wasn't a pub she knew well, despite the fact it was just round the corner from the hospital. Because she had to drive to and from work, and because she had the girls, she rarely went for a drink after her shift. It was all right in here, she supposed, though it seemed like it was trying to be both a traditional English pub, with antlers on the walls and dim lighting, and a more modern, trendy venue with the bright red leather booths, a chalkboard with a list of cocktails rather than specials. She wasn't really sure it worked, and in all honesty, she'd rather be outside in a garden on a day like this than cramped up in a too hot, too dark room. She smiled at Becky as they approached the others, and Becky winked at her. She was the one who'd insisted they do this, who'd said it would be good for her. Ever since Ben had been led away by the police, she'd avoided this. drinking with people, being in any sort of relaxed environment, talking to people at all, really. Though maybe it had started earlier than that, if she was honest with herself. Since the day she'd found out Nicola was poisoned. Becky ushered Fiona into the booth next to Cynthia from HR, Malcolm, one of the radiology techs, and Kate, another of the nurses. There were a few more people standing and talking across the other side of the booth, glasses half empty already, and they all smiled and made fake cheering noises when she sat down. She tried her best to smile back, but it felt brittle on her face, like the slightest unkind word might break it.
"Fiona, so glad you could make it," said Cynthia.
Fiona felt her eyebrows trying to shoot up into her forehead, but managed to keep them where they belonged. But really, the way Cynthia said it, when it was her own leaving drinks, for God's sake.
"I was just telling Malcolm and Kate that your replacement starts next week. She lives just over in Clifton. Her 2 sons have gone off to university and—"
Fiona nodded, barely listening, as Cynthia prattled on. She glanced over her shoulder looking for Becky, but she'd already disappeared. So few of them had come. That was better, she told herself. She hadn't wanted lots of people, hadn't wanted a big send-off. It had been an effort to come out in the first place, so she didn't need the whole hospital here leering at her, judging her, especially after seeing Ben. She was back there for a second, looking at his pale face, listening to him tell her he loved her. No, she wouldn't let herself feel anything for him. It was too little, too late. God, she needed a drink. She was too hot already, and her stomach felt bloated, despite the fact she'd barely eaten today. A side effect of the HRT she was taking, no doubt.
"Don't you think so too, Fiona?"
Kate sprung at her, her brown eyes intense on Fiona's face. Thankfully, Becky chose this moment to reappear, thrusting a glass of white wine into her hand, beads of condensation already forming on the outside of the glass. Fiona took it gratefully. "Where's mine, Shorty?" Malcolm asked, using the nickname he'd started, based on her surname rather than on the fact she was actually short. He grinned at her, and Becky raised her eyebrows.
"Free wine is only for people I like," she said, dead straight-faced.
Malcolm continued to grin, a little uncertainly, while Becky stared him out. It was only when Malcolm's face dropped that Becky laughed.
"Oh, you know I'm only kidding. But seriously, is you all round now?"
She winked at him. Fiona took a sip of her wine, felt almost guilty at the relief she felt when the cool sharpness of it slid down her throat. She watched as Malcolm huffed, then manoeuvred himself out of the booth, shaking his head mournfully at Becky. "Only because you asked, Shorty, not for anyone else." She felt a pang, watching the two of them, the easy banter between them. She couldn't remember the last time she'd had that with anyone at all. Couldn't imagine a time in the future when it wouldn't feel like an effort just to talk to someone, let alone make jokes. She supposed that was another reason she was grateful to have Sarah around. Sarah didn't need constant conversation, preferred to be in silence a lot of the time, which suited Fiona just fine. Becky waved him off, clearly oblivious to the way his gaze stayed trained on her whenever she was in the room. Fiona understood that, the need to soak in some of that light, even more so now. She'd thought she'd had that once, with Ben. Those early years, it had been like no one else was in the room when he was there. Another thing she'd never have again. There were those damn tears, threatening the back of her eyes again. Seeing him today had opened it all up, proven that she was not as good as she thought she was at banking it all inside her. She took another hurried sip of wine, but this time it didn't slide down so easily, getting stuck on the lump in her throat. Kate slid into Malcolm's space and leaned across Cynthia to speak to Fiona. "So, how are you, Fiona?" Fiona forced her lips to turn upwards, though she was pretty sure it couldn't pass as a natural smile. "Oh, I'm fine, as fine as can be." "It must have been awful." Kate continued. And Fiona, at a loss of what to say, looked at Becky for support, but she was now chatting to a woman Fiona was pretty sure worked in the canteen, though she couldn't be totally sure. It didn't surprise her that Becky knew her, she knew everyone. But it did surprise her that a woman she didn't even know the name of was at her leaving drinks. She wondered if she'd come for the gossip, to report back that she'd been in the same room as semi-famous Fiona Gregory. Fiona chased away the bitterness with a gulp of wine, even as she reminded herself to be careful that she had to drive home. "I don't know how I could have survived it," Kate was saying now, shaking her head in what was clearly supposed to be a sympathetic way, though her eyes gleamed as they traced the new lines on Fiona's face, seeking some slither of gossip, no doubt. God, she shouldn't have come. Shouldn't have given in to the craving for normalcy. "Well, you do what you have to, don't you?" Fiona's words were a bit sharper than she'd meant them to be. But what did Kate want her to say? That she was barely surviving it herself? That there were times she wasn't sure if she'd be able to keep going? "And your girls, how are they doing?" Kate pressed. "They're fine," Fiona said shortly. Or as fine as they can be, given their dad had disappeared without a word to them. She glanced again at Becky, hoping for some help, but instead caught the end of what canteen woman was saying, pushing back her greying hair as she did so. "It just goes to show, doesn't it? You can think you know who you sleep next to every night, but then some people just don't, do they?" Fiona wasn't sure if it was her imagination or if everyone in the booth had now turned to look at canteen woman, considering her words. Then she felt the force of all their eyes on her face, burning her skin, almost accusatory, like she should have known what Ben was capable of all along. Something ugly slithered in her stomach, and she fought the need to throw the rest of her drink in canteen woman's face. "So tell us where you're moving to, Fee," said Becky in an overly bright voice. Fiona didn't miss the glare she shot at canteen woman and was grateful for it. Fiona swallowed the remainder of her glass of wine, and though she was disappointed that it seemed to have run out so quickly, she shook her head when Becky pointed at it to ask if she wanted another one. "Well, we move to Devon next week," Fiona said, trying to force her voice to stay normal, not to let on at the twisting inside her. "I've rented a house right by the sea, which the girls will love, and I found a lovely school for them." She kept talking, her words coming on autopilot, the same thing she told anyone when they asked her about her life. But all the time her mind was working. These people, they didn't understand how she couldn't have seen it in Ben. They would have read the news, so they knew that he wasn't just guilty of murder, but that he planned it, administered the poison over several months. A psychopath. She'd seen that word bandied about, even though she'd tried to avoid reading the articles. And maybe they were right. Her chest constricted, making it painful to keep up the mindless flow of conversation tumbling about her. Surely she should have known, should have seen it over all their years of marriage. She'd left her daughters alone with him, for Christ's sake. Her stomach turned. No. Fiona's tongue stuck to the top of her mouth mid-sentence, her explanation that she'd already applied for a few general admin roles cut short. No. Ben wouldn't have hurt the girls. She was sure of that. Fiona became aware that everyone was watching her, and suddenly wished she'd been paying more attention to what she was saying. Malcolm was there too. At some point he'd come back with more drinks and she hadn't even noticed. "Well, that's good," Becky jumped in, giving Fiona another reason to be grateful for her as a friend. "You don't need to stick to hospitals, do you? Anywhere would take you for an admin role, for sure." Fiona nodded, picked up her wineglass only to remember that it was empty. "Exactly. And Sarah's coming with you, is she?" Becky carried on. Fiona frowned a little. She didn't remember telling anyone this, but apparently she had. Just what else didn't she remember saying or doing, in this mindless, empty state she'd been in since Ben had been led away? "Yeah, she's coming so she can look after Lily and Emily for me, and is going to help with rent, thank God." She tried for a smile, was relieved to see it returned around the table. The thought of Sarah made her reach into her handbag, take out her phone. Sure enough, there was a message from her. Fiona had texted her as she was leaving the prison to check in. Not telling her where she'd been, of course. She pressed the screen of her phone to the palm of her hand, then stood up abruptly. Several sets of heads jerked up to follow her movement. "I'm really sorry, I've just got to take a call. I'll be back in a minute." A few nods around the table, and Fiona shuffled out the booth and bolted for the door, quite suddenly unable to take a moment more of this. The garden was really just a couple of wooden picnic tables out the front of the pub, though they were still full on this first spell of good weather they were having, despite the fact it was right on the road, traffic whizzing past at regular intervals. Fiona leaned against the white wall of the pub, opened up the message Sarah had sent her. A photo, clearly a selfie, of Sarah and her two girls, Emily beaming into the camera, Lily looking over the top of the phone, clearly having missed the order to smile as she so often did. Fiona felt a tug on her heart, almost painful. Ben's daughters, all three of them, and he'd abandoned all three of them. Fiona let the hand holding her phone drop to her side, closed her eyes. Wished she could just crawl up into bed and sleep for days, just to have a break from it. "Fee?" She opened her eyes to see Becky coming out of the pub door, the chatter inside briefly booming out across the patio before the door swung shut again. Fiona smiled weakly. "Did you come out to check on me?" Becky shook her head, grinned. "No, came out for a cig." She wiggled her pack of cigarettes in the air, sighed dramatically. "Stupid, isn't it, that I work in a hospital and still smoke? But I figure I'll stop when I'm 40. Then I'll still have plenty of years of being healthy to even it out." She offered the packet to Fiona. Fiona started to shake her head, then stopped. "Do you know what? I will have one." She took one, lit it with Becky's lighter, and breathed in deeply. She hardly ever smoked, couldn't actually remember the last time she had, but she enjoyed the lightheadedness it brought, and since she couldn't drink anymore and drive safely, it seemed like the perfect solution. They stood in silence for a moment, blowing out puffs of smoke which twirled together in front of them before fading away. Becky leaned back against the pub wall next to Fiona. "Want to talk about it?" she asked casually, without looking at Fiona. Fiona glanced sideways at Becky. It was the first time she'd actually offered outright. She stubbed out her cigarette on the wall beside her, dropped it. "Not really." Becky nodded, put out her own cigarette. "Okay." And though she said nothing more, Fiona felt her eyes start their stupid, incessant stinging. She screwed them up, daring the tears to come. "It's also okay if you're angry," Becky said softly. Fiona's lip trembled when she spoke next. "Honestly, I don't know how I feel most of the time. One minute I'm feeling one thing, the next minute it's something else entirely. I don't know how to process it, I guess." "That's okay too." Fiona rubbed her hands over her face. "You would have thought I'd have figured it out by now, all the months I've had." Becky raised her eyebrows, then laughed, the sound so surprising that it made Fiona start. "Yeah, you're right," said Becky. Fiona stared at her, the answer definitely not what she'd been expecting. "I'd really have expected you to get over it by now, after a couple of weeks if I'm honest. I mean, it's not that bad, is it?" She grinned, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Fiona felt a real smile in response, the beginnings of a laugh. "I've barely cried. Do you know that? Through the trial. I guess it just didn't feel real, and since then I've had to keep it together for the kids. It all feels like a really bad dream, you know, like I'm expecting to wake up or something." She ran a hand through her hair. "God, that's such a cliché." "Use all the clichés you want, mate." Becky paused. "I didn't read the news. I don't read the local papers anyway, and I didn't want to hear it all third hand. I just thought you should know. Fiona swallowed the lump. Thanks. She knew what Becky was saying, that she was a blank canvas to talk about it if she wanted to, but she couldn't face it, even then. So instead she sighed sadly. I shouldn't have come to this. Becky reached out, squeezed her shoulder. I'm sorry if you felt like I was making you. I just thought it might be good for you, you know? You're not the only one. Sarah says I should stay, enjoy myself for once. She raised her phone, waved it in the air as an explanation. She sounds like a godsend, that one. She really is. She keeps surprising me, you know? I thought she'd have run a mile after she found out everything. Further than that, I thought she'd have fled the length of the bloody country and never want to speak to me again. But instead she stayed and she helped. I'm not sure I deserve her. Well, you do, but she's a strong one, I'll give you that. Becky crossed one leg over the other, seemed to lean even further into the white pub wall. I remember being so impressed with how she dealt with everything when Charlie died. Leukemia. Awful way to go. She cocked her head. You remember? Yeah, I was there, wasn't I? Not on that ward, but around. And of course I took a special interest. She glanced over meaningfully at Fiona. Right, sorry, that time is all a bit hazy. Becky just nodded like that was to be expected. There was no judgment on her face, but Fiona felt the guilt anyway. The guilt that her husband was the one to send Nicola off to meet Charlie in the afterlife. And the guilt that she hadn't been a better person, that she'd let her own petty jealousy stop her from being a friend to Nicola, to help her with what she was going through. Ben had been there for her, consoling her, sharing her grief. His stepbrother, her husband. She'd convinced herself that she was doing the right thing, leaving them to it. But really, she'd just been protecting herself. Fiona cleared her throat, tried to stop her thoughts from spiralling. We lost Sarah after that for a few months. I mean, we barely saw her. She became so withdrawn. We were all so worried about her. Can you blame her? Fiona shook her head, but Becky carried on, her words slurring slightly in a way that suggested she was perhaps a little tipsy. I mean, not just dealing with her dad dying in that terrible way, but finding out the way she did. Fiona frowned. Finding out? It was Becky's turn to frown. Fiona pushed away from the pub wall. Bex, what do you mean? I thought you knew, Becky said slowly. She pushed away from the pub wall too, opened her cigarettes and lit another one. Look, she said, taking a long pull. Cynthia told me, and you know what she's like, so this could all be wrong. But like I said, I took a special interest because it was your family, and well, the way I heard it, Sarah offered to be a bone marrow donor for her dad and wanted to give blood for his transfusions. Fiona let out a whoosh of breath in relief. Right, I knew that. Ben did the same. Right. But it turned out that Sarah couldn't donate because her blood type was incompatible with Charlie's. God, that's awful. She didn't tell me. She must have felt so powerless. No wonder Sarah became obsessed with giving blood after that. She was trying to save other people because she hadn't been able to save her dad. Well, yeah, I'm sure she did, but the thing is, the reason she couldn't donate was because her blood type is AB and Charlie's is O. For a moment, Fiona felt almost like she was suspended in midair, waiting for something to sink in, waiting for when she'd crash back down to the ground. But that means... But no, she couldn't finish the sentence out loud. Because she already knew. She didn't need Becky to explain it to her. She knew that, with blood types like that, there was no way that Sarah could have been Charlie's daughter. But when Sarah had been given this information, then surely she would have figured that out too. Figured it out over a year before Fiona had told her, before she claimed to be shocked and appalled at the knowledge. It meant that Sarah had known, all this time, that Charlie wasn't her father. Chapter 34. I have to leave. Fiona whipped past Becky. Her mind was reeling, unable to process this new information, unable to figure out exactly what it meant. Sarah had known. All this time she'd known, and she'd lied about it. What? Becky's voice, though right behind her, sounded distant, like she was on a different plane of existence somehow, one where Sarah hadn't lied to her. I thought you said you were staying. I have to get back to the girls, Fiona said, harsher than was fair. After all, this wasn't Becky's fault. Then she realised something, spun back to Becky. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? She demanded. Becky actually took a step back. I told you, she said slowly, with the air of one trying to calm a rabid dog. I thought you already knew. I didn't. Fiona shook her head, aware that she might just look a tad frantic. I thought I was the one to tell Sarah, and... She pulled both hands through her hair. How could you not have realised that, Bex? The trial was all about how Sarah had only just found out about Ben, that Ben was trying to stop Sarah finding out, so he... But she swallowed down the rest of the words, for the first time, not because she couldn't bear to say them, but because there was a seedling of doubt growing inside her. Ben had said just now that he hadn't known Sarah was his daughter. He was still insisting even now, when there was no point in denying it, when his sentence had already been served. I didn't follow the trial in the news, Fee, Becky said, her calm tone faltering just a little. I just said that, remember? Fiona shook her head again, not because she didn't believe Becky, but because she couldn't process it all fast enough. The picnic benches swarming with people blurred in front of her, and she felt like the pavement was tilting sideways underneath her. She blinked to try and clear it, make sure that it wasn't the one glass of wine making her feel like this. This didn't necessarily mean anything, she told herself. Becky had said herself that she'd only heard this second-hand. It might not even be true, might be utter nonsense. She should talk to Sarah, give her the chance to deny it. But then, a little voice piped up at the back of her mind. Of course Sarah would deny it, if she'd already kept silent, had lied to a jury during a murder trial. She was hardly going to own up to Fiona now, was she? Fiona swept away from Becky, leaving her to frantically stub out her cigarette, and barged past people in the pub to get to the booth. Grabbing her handbag and ignoring the various people who tried to say something or other to her, she spun on her heel, muttering a faint goodbye to the nearest person. Malcolm, she thought it was. She didn't care in that moment what they thought of her. They'd clearly already made up their minds about her, had only shown up because of fake friendship, some weird social code, or purely to get a good look at her. This would just be a good story for them. The crazy wife of a murderer bailing on her own leaving party with a panicked look in her eyes, without so much as a goodbye. Becky caught up with her just inside the front door and scurried after her as Fiona bolted out of the pub and towards her car, fumbling in her handbag for the keys. Fee, what's wrong? What am I missing? Becky pleaded. Why's this made you so upset? Fiona only pawed around more anxiously in her handbag. Where were her goddamn keys? I don't know, she mumbled, directing her voice to the depths of her bag. I don't know, but Sarah told me differently, and why? Why would she lie to me? She hadn't meant it as a genuine question, didn't expect Becky to answer, but she did anyway. You mean, why wouldn't Sarah have told you Charlie wasn't her dad when she first found out? How was Becky this calm, Fiona wondered, when the axis of her own world had just been irrevocably altered? She looked up at Becky numbly, nodded. Becky took a breath, and Fiona smelled faint cigarette smoke. For some reason, the smell of it, so normal, seemed to calm her racing heart. Perhaps she was overreacting. Her emotions weren't exactly on even footing these days. Well, I don't know, but maybe she didn't want to upset anyone, not after everything. But she lied under oath, Bex, Fiona whispered. Why would she do that?
maybe she thought it had gone too far and she couldn't take it back.
Fiona said nothing, and Becky carried on hurriedly.
Look, Fee, I know you've been through a lot, but I'm sure there's a logical explanation for this, okay?
Yeah, maybe. She looked down into her handbag, felt tears well up. I can't find my keys, she said pathetically. Becky took her handbag from her gently, reached in and produced her keys after a second. Fiona took them silently, staring at them, like somehow they held the answers. Then she snapped back to herself. She pulled Becky into a quick, tight hug. I'll call you later, okay? I need to figure this out. Tell the others bye.
Of course, mate. But look, do call me, okay?
Becky sounded a little nervous, and Fiona really hoped that was on her behalf, rather than because she was worried the others were right about the fact that she really had gone a little crazy. Fiona scrambled into her car, taking deep, calming breaths as she started the engine. She had to stop this spiralling, had to think objectively. Okay, so Sarah had probably known all this time. God, she was so stupid. Her obsession with giving blood. She'd made Fiona and Ben go with her once, about 8 months ago, to the Bath Donor Centre, insisted that they too should give blood. And they were hardly going to deny it, not when Charlie had just passed away. It was one of Sarah's better days, Fiona remembered. She'd been more talkative, actually seemed to want to be around people for the first time since Charlie's funeral. And Fiona remembered how Sarah had explained to Ben and Fiona about the different blood types. Fiona had thought at the time that she was just trying to explain why she couldn't have given blood to Charlie, had needed to talk about it out loud so that she could lessen the guilt she so clearly felt. She'd known, before the nurse had even told them, hadn't she? Had known that Ben's blood type was B, had talked about how Nicola's was type A. Nicola, who hadn't been invited along for some reason. Fiona remembered the whole day so damn clearly because that was when she'd known with absolute certainty that Sarah was Ben's daughter. Had stopped being able to deny what their similar looks, what the timing of the affair had meant. She'd had to go for coffee with them in Bath afterwards. Had to watch the two of them sitting next to each other and wonder how no one had ever noticed before then. She realised she was currently accelerating straight towards a red light. She took her foot off the pedal, told herself to stop it. She was overreacting. All this meant was that Sarah had lied about not knowing Ben was her biological father. It didn't prove anything else. Didn't necessarily change anything. Because the important thing was that Ben hadn't known that Sarah knew. Of that she was sure, or as sure as she could be of anything right now. Which meant that he still had a motive for killing Nicola that hadn't changed. Sarah knowing about Ben didn't change the fact that Ben could have been angry with Nicola for not resuming the affair, or could have wanted to kill her to stop her telling Sarah everything. The light changed to green and the car jerked forward in first. But what Ben had said about the poison being in her system, she felt something cold trickle along the inside of her forearms. He was right. She hadn't ever eaten around the annex, really, had avoided going there as much as possible. She hadn't thought anything of it at the time, too caught up in the hell of the trial. But what Ben had suggested, it made sense. It made more sense that someone deliberately snuck traces of the poison into her food or drink, hers and not Lily or Emily's, than it did for her to have accidentally ingested it at the annex. She looked at the car clock. 30 minutes. Never had the journey home felt quite so long. Could the jury, the detectives, have been wrong? Was there a chance that Ben really was innocent? Maybe they should have hired a better lawyer, one not quite as inexperienced. She didn't know why they'd gone for him, just that his enthusiasm had seemed like a good idea at the time. And if she was honest, she hadn't been paying enough attention. She hadn't truly believed Ben was innocent, hadn't believed he'd deserved the best lawyer available. But what if Ben really had just believed the lawyer when he said that the best thing to do was to plead manslaughter? What if he'd been so panicked about it all that he thought he had no choice? And there she'd been, letting her doubts get the better of her so that she stopped seeing things clearly, stopped trying to help. The tea leaves. She remembered the court case. Wasn't there something about the tea leaves? She'd been barely in the room while Ben was being cross-examined, had shown up only because the lawyer told her to. But they'd said that it was easier to poison Nicola because of the tea leaves, hadn't they? And it was Sarah who had suggested they'd made the switch, wasn't it? Come on, she urged the car as it made it up to 80 miles per hour. Was she seriously considering that Sarah had killed her own mother? Sarah, who'd been such a rock for her through all of this, who had sat with her own children, played with them, looked after them. Sarah, who'd been so angry with Ben, had sat through his trial glaring at him, so pure in her anger towards him. Sarah, who had loved her father beyond all else, who hadn't spoken to her mother for months after his death, had been eaten away by guilt and rage at first, for not being able to save Charlie. No, surely not. She didn't have any evidence to suggest that could be true, and the detectives had interviewed her along with the rest of them. Surely they would have noticed if something was up. Even if Sarah had become more interested in the garden since her dad died, had been the perfect student, keen to learn as much as possible about all the different plants. No, there had to be a logical explanation for this, for why Sarah would lie, would pretend she hadn't known. Maybe she had thought that if she'd said anything, it would have lessened the chance of Ben being convicted. And if Sarah had thought that Ben was the one who killed her mother, then she wouldn't have wanted that, would have done anything to make sure he went to prison. She was a determined girl, after all, and was known to stick her heels in. Yes, Fiona could see Sarah thinking like that. She tried to push the car faster, but it groaned at her. She had to get home, had to. But to do what? To confront Sarah? No, she was going to go home and have a calm, reasonable conversation with her niece, with Lily and Emily's sister. That was all. There was a logical explanation for this, just like Becky said. There had to be. Extract from court transcript, dated 7th the 4th, 19. Appearances: S.G., Sarah Elizabeth Gregory. L.J., Laura Jenkins, prosecution. T.B., Thomas Barrett, defence. L.J. Ms. Gregory, you didn't know until recently that Benjamin is your biological father, is that right? S.G. Yes, that's correct. I only found out when Fiona told me a few months ago. I still can't really believe it. I can't believe they never told me all these years. Well, I was still coming to terms with the fact that this had happened to my mother, that I'm now an orphan, and now it turns out I'm, well, not, I suppose. L.J. I wonder, do you know if Ben knew that he was your father? S.G. I've since spoken to him, and yes, he knew whatever he's saying in court. He knew, and he never said anything. L.J. Why do you think that is? S.G. Well, I don't know. He said it's because my mum didn't want to tell me and he was respecting her wishes. I didn't want to ask him more. I didn't want to talk to him at all after what he's done, but... L.J. But? S.G. But I don't think it can be true. My dad, my real dad, it would have broken his heart to find this out, just like it's broken mine. But after he died, then my mum didn't have a reason to keep it a secret anymore. Ben did, though. He didn't know Fiona knew. Fiona never told him that she'd figured it out. L.J. So you think Ben was the one who wanted to keep it a secret? SG. Yes. I think he didn't want my mother to tell me, but she tried to anyway. And then... God. And then the bastard killed her. God, I'm sorry, I don't... LJ. That's okay, take your time. So, Miss Gregory, just for clarification, you say that your mother tried to tell you about it. Am I right in saying that you think the voicemail your mother left on your phone the night she died, when she told you she had to tell you something, was about the relationship between her and Ben? TB. Your Lordship, my friend here seems to be suggesting that the witness knows exactly what the voicemail in question pertains to, which obviously can't possibly be the case. Judge.
Yes, Miss James, could we?
SG. Yes, to be clear, I think that my mother was leaving me that message because she wanted to tell me that Ben was really my father, and I think Ben overheard that. Judge.
Miss Gregory, if I could ask you to stick to answering direct questions, please.
SG. I'm sorry, I want to be very clear on this. I think the police have the right person here. I think Ben was the one who killed my mother. Whether that's because he was resentful about her not wanting to start the affair again, or whether he wanted to shut her up, to stop me from finding out the truth, I don't know. But I know one thing. Ben tore my family apart. He took everything that matters most from me. He deserves to rot in jail for what he did. Chapter 35. Fiona let herself into the house as quietly as she could, barely daring to breathe as the front door clicked shut behind her. Nonsense. This was utter nonsense, creeping into her own home. She was being ridiculous. But telling herself that didn't stop her heart from beating faster than was comfortable, didn't stop the adrenaline that was coursing through her, making each movement feel jittery. The house was silent, and she felt something hot shoot through her, immediately imagining the worst. She sprinted to the kitchen, barely daring to think, then let out an enormous breath. They were there, playing in the garden. Lily and Emily laughing as Sarah chased them, pretending to be the monster. She was at her most exuberant, Sarah, when she played with the girls. The gate to her and Ben's special part of the garden, which he hadn't been able to go into since he'd been arrested, was open. Her fingers went into a little spasm at her side, but she didn't move to open the back door, didn't let herself dwell too much on that. Not yet. Instead, she went upstairs, her breathing coming too quickly. But Sarah wouldn't hurt the girls. No, she'd had plenty of chances. If she'd wanted to, she would have done it already. Fiona was just being ridiculous. Paranoid. Having your sister-in-law murdered by your husband would do that to you. She'd rushed home with no real plan, and now, in the bright light, surrounded by all her possessions, that felt stupid. She let herself into the spare room, which was currently acting as Sarah's second room, for when she wasn't staying overnight at her own flat. Fiona glanced around, twisting her hands nervously in front of her. This may only be Sarah's part home, but she'd made it her own. Flowers on the windowsill, a jewellery box on her bedside table, and photos. Photos in frames dotted around the room, all of Sarah and her dad, a few of her flatmate, but none of Nicola. She'd noticed that before in a vague sort of way, but it had never worried her. She thought the pain must be too fresh for Sarah, or that maybe she had photos of her mum at her own flat, away from Fiona. After all, Sarah wouldn't want to remind Fiona of what her husband had done, would she? But now it felt sinister. All these photos of Charlie, none of Nicola. Like Sarah was pretending she'd never even had a mother. Fiona walked round, looking at each photo individually. She'd never thought of Sarah as capable of killing her mother. Why would she? She had no motive. But did the fact that she'd known Ben was her father give her one? Sarah had loved her dad more than anything. It had been almost unbearable to watch her when he was ill. trying to find a way to save him, refusing to give up with the fierce determination that was so characteristic. Her grief at losing him was terrible. No one had been able to get through to her, to help her, especially not Nicola. Fiona tried to imagine how Sarah would have felt, finding out about her biological father that way. Admittedly, even if she had been his biological daughter, she still might not have been a match. But Fiona could imagine Sarah's take on it, fueled by grief. Could imagine her thinking that the only reason she was unable to help Charlie was because of a lie her mother had told her for her whole life. She must have been angry, for sure. Might have even hated Nicola in that moment for not telling her. And she'd seen Sarah when she decided something was wrong, seen how unmovable she could be on it. She judged people harshly at times, Fiona knew that, yet she'd never thought it was anything worse than having slightly too high standards. No, it was unthinkable. Unthinkable that a daughter could kill her mother like that. And yet, Fiona allowed herself to consider it. All the evidence against Ben, and Ben's insistence throughout the whole trial that he didn't understand any of it. The book on poisonous plants. Sarah could have put it there at any point, couldn't she? And the day Ben was arrested, Sarah had brought them books that day, had insisted on putting them on the bookshelf. Ben's phone. She could have easily borrowed it. Hadn't Ben told her that Sarah had used his phone to ring the doctor, had told them all that the doctor had said it was nothing to worry about? And the gardening. Sarah had wanted to learn, had needed the distraction. Fiona frowned as she thought about the deadly nightshade. Hadn't Sarah liked those plants? Suggested they might look good in the garden? Or was that just Fiona's hazy mind trying to make it all fit together? One thing was for sure, though. Sarah had had just as much access to Nicola's food and drink as Ben had. She'd been hanging around the house earlier on the day she died. Could she have slipped something into Nicola's tea then? She wasn't there at the time of death, but that could just be because she'd made sure not to be, so as to make herself less likely to be a suspect. And she'd been ever so sure that Nicola had been murdered, even before the police had said anything. Why? Had she been so sure because she was the one who killed her? Because she wanted not just her mother, but also Ben to pay? She walked back downstairs in a daze. Surely not. This couldn't be happening. This time, when she went into the kitchen, she opened the back door, stepped out into the garden. The light was fading now, nighttime shadows creeping into the garden, obscuring patches of it even from her, who knew it so well. It was once her saviour, this garden, a place for her to take a break from whatever was bothering her. The flowers used to hum to her, comforting her. But now the purple and white clematis, the pink hebes, the green of the berberis, just before it flowered, all of them taunted her as they began their lives once more. All of them seemed to look at her knowingly, as if to say they'd known what was happening, what one of their sisters was being used for, and she should have known too. Lily and Emily noticed her first and ran over to her in excitement for a fleeting hug, only to dart back to Sarah again, intent on their game. Sarah pushed her hair away from her slightly flushed face. "You're back early," she said with a smile. She rested one hand on Emily's shoulder, the picture of a doting older sister, playing with her younger siblings before bedtime. But it was wrong. Fiona felt that, her body reacting instinctively. She needed to get the girls away from her. The smile dropped off Sarah's face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Fiona forced a bright smile, hoped her face didn't betray her. "Nothing, sorry. It's just, isn't it nearly bedtime?" She raised her eyebrows at her daughters so she didn't have to keep looking at Sarah, who was now cocking her head like she knew something wasn't right. "Sarah said we could stay up," said Emily with a wicked grin, knowing full well she was playing the adults off against one another. Sarah flashed Fiona a grin. Sorry, guilty.
We were helping in the garden, said Lily earnestly. Were you?
It was an effort to keep her voice normal, to force the reaction Lily was expecting.
That's good, my darling. And were you having fun?
Lily nodded vigorously. Sorry, I can get them to bed now if you want, Sarah asked, ignoring Emily, who was tugging on her arm. Fiona's skin began to tingle, watching them. No, Fiona said on a whooshing breath. It's okay. Finish up the game or whatever. They can have a couple of minutes, then I'll put them to bed. She didn't want to make a scene. Needed time to think, to process.
I'll get the watering can,
Emily announced, and set off down the garden to where it was discarded under one of the pear trees. Lily, of course, followed. Fiona cleared her throat once the two of them were out of immediate earshot. I went to Nicola and Charlie's graves today. Her voice was little more than a whisper. Sarah raised her eyebrows. Oh? Was it what she expected to see, or did Sarah's expression harden just a bit? I took some fresh flowers there, Fiona said slowly, watching Sarah intently. Thought it would be nice as we're leaving, you know? Sarah flicked her long hair back behind her shoulder. Yes, I've been meaning to do that, actually. I haven't taken flowers to Mum's grave in too long. Fiona felt a jolt run through her. There were some old white lilies there, though, she said, trying to stay casual. Yeah, I took them a while back, like I said. I need to get up there more often, but you know how it is. I do indeed, Fiona said softly. Sarah shrugged, smiling a little, and turned towards where Lily and Emily were now calling her name. But didn't Nicola hate white flowers? I thought she said they reminded her of death, or illness or something. Sarah glanced over her shoulder at Fiona. Oh, did she? I didn't know that. She said it so casually, but it couldn't be right. She had to have known. Every nerve in Fiona's body tingled with warning as Sarah walked over to Lily and Emily. The girls shot off, no doubt still intent on their game, checking behind to see if Sarah was following. They shot right through the gate to the wild side of the garden, Sarah now jogging behind. Fiona followed numbly, but burst into a run when she saw where Emily had stopped. What are you doing? She shouted, ready to pounce on Sarah, to tear her daughters away from her. Sarah looked back at Fiona, seeming genuinely alarmed.
We're helping,
Emily said proudly, picking up a discarded plastic spade from the ground, one that was part of a beach set.
It's dangerous,
Lily said, nodding, collecting her own yellow spade from beneath the mound of dirt.
Sarah said we don't need it anymore,
Emily finished. And all Fiona could do was stare, the world ringing around her, her daughter's mindless chatter lost in the abyss between them, as Emily and Lily shoved their plastic spades into the ground around the belladonna. Sarah picked up her own spade, shoved her foot on it and made the final blow, tearing the roots away from the ground. The tall plant fell with a gentle thud on the ground next to Sarah. And Sarah looked across at Fiona, over the heads of her two half-sisters, and smiled. That is the end of Bad Seed. It was written by Jessica Eames and read by Emma Powell. This has been an Oak Hill Audiobooks presentation. For further details of our extensive catalogue of unabridged audiobooks, please call 0116 236 4325 or visit our website www.oakhillpublishing.co.uk.